Welcome to Splintercast, not a Brandon Sanderson podcast. We're a bunch of mega fans here to chat about things that aren't Brandon's works or the Cosmere. This is our new experimental spin-off show where we can talk about anything and everything we want. And to kick things off, we're tackling one of 17th Shard's most recommended book series, Cradle by Will Wight. I'm Ala, and joining me on this adventure is Evgeni.
Hi, I'm Argent, and I'm very confused because unlike Eric, Ala did not do a countdown, and so I was like fixing my beard, and I was scratching my butt, and then she was like, "We're live,
we're live, baby! This is all organic, free-fed."
Congratulations on your all-natural, grass-fed, free-range, cage-free Argent and his beard.
Oh no.
Cheers.
Cheers.
And also joining me is Shannon.
Oh, hi. I'm Gray, or sometimes Gray Watch, depending on where you find me. I am excited to be here. I also have a drink, but it's tea. It's not alcoholic like Evgeni is. So, cheers.
Moving on, we have Ben.
Hello. I'm Ben, also sometimes known as Overlord Jebus on other things. I'm here. I've just finished my tea, and then I finished my water, and then Evgeni got an alcoholic drink, so I reached over and grabbed. I have a crate of Budweiser next to me left over from a stag do, and so I'm having a bud. So that's how I'm doing. How is everyone else? Yeah.
You're in the
our opening Splintercast. We are doing already Splintercast after hours.
After hours? No.
This ain't no Shardcast. This is we're free and wild.
It's definitely after hours in the UK.
Oh yes.
Finally, last but not least, joining us is Ian.
Hey, I'm Weir Writer, and I am drinking regular lemonade.
Woo!
No alcohol. And I just want to point out that we have claimed the abandoned title of Splintercast. Long abandoned. Back in the shadow days that it used to be Alex's reaction podcast. But it is dead and gone. And we have
dug it up.
Taken up the fallen title.
This is like press F to pay respects. And all the the most original, use of the meme.
Yep.
And yeah, that was like before we even had cameras, I think.
Oh yeah,
way
before. It was like before Shardcast
came back
in its current iteration.
Yeah,
long before.
But we had a long conversation over multiple days and channels, and we decided that it feels appropriate that our spin-off show our Splinter show, if you will, we'll have the name Splintercast.
Yeah.
Yep.
We talked about Slivercast.
Yeah.
That didn't feel right. I think we mentioned Avatarcast. That has confusions with Legend of Korra.
Multiple properties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
Avatar,
and
we're all blue.
Yeah. Avatar and Sliver also have weird definition problems in the cosmere. Splinter's nice. We know what a Splinter is. We got this.
Yep. Yep. I'm Rasarr, and I'm drinking iced tea.
Nice. Is that a beefalo?
As I always do. It's the only drink I'm drinking.
Yeah.
Was that a beefalo on your?
It's a Banfa from Star Wars.
Oh, yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Okay.
It's from a convention from like 10 years ago. There's this annual convention here called Star Force where they always make a themed mug from every year.
Oh, wow.
This one is I don't remember which year this one is from.
Nice.
But
yeah, so this was our show and tell, I suppose.
So, our drinks.
So before we kick things off, just a quick note about spoilers and how we'll be handling them in this episode. Because this isn't our usual content, as you may have already gathered. And so we can't expect everyone watching to already have read Cradle. So we'll be dividing this episode into 3 sections with 3 different levels of spoiler. First, there won't be any spoilers beyond what the series is generally about. So if you haven't read the Cradle and are interested in maybe trying it, then that when that section ends, this is where you should probably turn off the video. Or don't watch all the spoilers. It worked for me.
Yes, Rasarr. Who would ever do that?
Guilty as charged. But yeah, in the second section, we'll be talking all the way to Reaper, which is book 10 of the series. And finally, at the end of the episode, we'll discuss the latest book, Dreadgod, and the upcoming final book of the series.
Waybound.
Waybound.
I didn't know we had a name. There we go.
Yep.
It's at the end
It
of
is
of Dreadgod.
My eyes go right over those pages.
It's also not in the audiobook, so I did not hear it.
That's a good name.
Okay, so with all those titles and spoiler policy out of the way, let's get started. Because Cradle is a surprisingly popular series in our Discord server, but many of you who are now watching us have maybe never heard of it or never tried it, so let's begin with talking about what Cradle even is.
Okay, so, when you have a baby and you gotta put the baby somewhere,
Oh, yeah.
you put him in a cradle.
Sometimes
when you have a cat, you also put the cat in the cradle. It goes
In the silver spoon.
Yeah, and then you
That's a cat's cradle. Yeah.
ruined my bit, Ian. Anyway,
I mean, it's such a good song.
I was going into the silver spoon. It is a really good song. Anyway, so Cradle is a series by Will Wight, or as Daniel Green calls him, Will Wight.
Why?
And it is notable for a number of reasons. One of them is that, well, first of all, it's just a fun series. It's a good series. I would recommend most people read it just as it's a face value recommendation, right? It's just good fun. But one of the reasons it has been very popular within the cosmere circles is because it is a part of a connected universe in the same way that many of the books, well, by definition, all of the books in the cosmere are, right? So you have the Cradle series, which take place mostly on one world and things that happen there. You have not the Final Empire, the Elder Empire, which takes place in a different world, and you have the Traveler's Gate series, which is yet on a third one. And all of these worlds, much like a Cosmere world, have their own stories with their own characters, and then there is like an overarching stuff, like greater narrative that touches on the concept of the Way, which is like a multiverse that connects all of these individual worlds, which are kind of called iterations in the Willverse speak. Or well, no, I can't really coin the Waysmere, because then that makes it sound like a
that's
Cosmere
terrible.
thing.
Yeah, that's not.
And it's also terrible. Anyway, but people have been calling this connected universe the Willverse.
Yeah.
After Will Wight. So Cradle's kind of the big name in the series. It's got 11 books so far. The final 12th one should be coming out. I don't have the date off the top of my head, but I would expect like within the next year or so. Will has been crunching through these things.
There is about 6 months between book releases with Will Wight. He just blows these things out of his production line, And
they're between 400 and 700 pages each.
Yeah. They're super short, super snappy, and they come out very regularly. And so,
yeah.
I like that we are in a community that can look at a book that is between 400 and 700 pages long and say, "Oh, this is short."
Short and snappy.
Yeah, short and snappy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why 12 books sounds like a lot, but you just fly through these. They are, because they're short, snappy, and the pace of the books within them super quick.
Very fast paced, and also, while there is depth to like the world and the characters, we don't explore much of that depth in the books, and so if you like stop reading and pause and think about things, there is things to think about. But if you just want to like enjoy a good story, you can stay on the surface and just look beneath the surface without diving and just sprint through the entire book.
Yeah, people call them popcorn books for a reason. You know, it's sort of like you can just treat them like popcorn or candy. You know, you just pop them in, you eat it, and you don't have to think too much about it if you don't want to. You know, it's sort of like no one's going to be mad at you if you recommend popcorn and you're like, I wanted cake. No, I told you this was popcorn.
Yeah.
You know, like that's kind of the level of that's kind of the level here.
Yeah.
I think the last thing I want to say about Cradle that is kind of generic overview type of deal is that I want to touch on the world building just a little bit. It's a world where it's a fantasy world in that there's primarily magic. There is technology, but it's also driven by the magic. And the idea is that pretty much everyone on that world has access to the magic, but they have access to different flavors of it. You can think of it as something very similar to elemental magic, where different people have access to different combinations and expressions of the element, which they call their path. And so you can have one person who is on a path that combines fire and destruction, for example, and their magic is going to look one way, and you can have a different person who combines the same elements in a different path, and their magic is going to share some elements with the first person, but it's also going to be different in some ways. And you can have a third person whose access to the elements is, you know, water and dreams or whatever. And then the things they do and the way they do them is going to be way, way, way different from the first two. And you can get like a near infinite number of combinations with this, which makes for one, fun characters with fun paths that are fun to read about and explore, and two, just very, very like wide world with varied world building. So,
and I think one thing that I think is why this series appeals to people in the Brennan Sanderson community specifically, like there is a large crossover online between those two communities, is the well-defined magic system, which is those paths, is the abilities within those paths are very well defined, and then within those definitions they're very then cleverly used, which is, you know, a very common feature of Brandon's books, where he plays with the magics in clever ways. And that's something that happens a lot in these books as well, where you get these well defined abilities within the paths, and then the characters then utilize those abilities in clever and fun ways.
I also think one of like the less surface level reason there's like a crossover between Brandon and Will Wight here is like they both kind of believe in the rule of cool, is that if it, you know, there's a big focus on like, you know what, if we're going to do this, why not make it look cool? Why not make it look rad, you know? Yeah. And, you know, like, and it's has its own satisfaction to that. You know, I don't think it's necessarily a sign of like childishness or shallowness. It's its own thing. And I think like there's something to be said for just like reading and going like, wow, that was cool.
That was cool.
That ruled.
Anderson's zeroth law, always on the side of what's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, awesome things are awesome.
What this is so Brandon's books are like a good fantasy movie that has been made into a book, right? There are moments in those books that you can clearly see as if they were on the big screen, and the way Brandon describes them is very
cinematic.
Yeah. Cradle is anime written into
100%.
a book.
Yep.
But, you know, without a lot of the cheesy stuff that comes with anime, right?
Yeah. All the fat trimmed off. All of it.
So, speaking of magic and anime and all that jazz, it's probably worth talking about what exactly genre Cradle is.
So I can take that.
It's romance.
The joke there is Will hates writing romance.
It's
in any of his series.
It's It is incredibly
Yeah.
easy to forget
There
that
is
the characters who
very-
are couples on screen are couples.
There's very little romance or sexuality in these books, or even sensuousness whatsoever. Like there's none of that.
So Cradle is often considered like a Western take on the cultivation genre, which is, or more properly, like the Eastern term, like Shanxia.
It's cultivation fantasy.
Yeah, cultivation fantasy, and generally draws a lot on Chinese mythology, like Taoism, and like there are a few key things like sacred treasures, like taking elixirs to enhance yourself, like kind of improving your soul by bringing in like spiritual mumbo jumbo. And there are heavy themes of like somebody starting at the bottom and growing to a cosmic scale in terms of power. But it's also kind of a flagship series in progression fantasy, which is a more Western term that includes a lot of different things, like, and there's overlap with things like lit RPG, game lit, Shanxia, shonen battle manga,
Light novel, like
yeah.
isekai stuff.
which like
Yeah.
at its core is about like, focusing on characters increasing in power and skill over time. And like some would argue, Stormlight Archive is progression fantasy because there are the scale of the odes.
It's an argument you could make, and I can see the comparison, but like I would also say probably very few of us would agree that it is a progression fantasy, but I think we all can see why they do progress in Stormlight Archive.
Yeah.
They progress through
Yeah, but the
power
books
levels.
aren't like Cradle
The
is
books-
very much about like the progression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do like the basic plot of Cradle is the guy who believes he has no magic powers gets a message from Angel saying you can totally have magic powers, and decides he's going to have the magicest powers.
That's
He
a great
does.
summary.
Oh boy, he does.
My understanding is that one of the pillars of cultivation fantasy and progression fantasy is acquiring power for power's sake, which is not something we see in Stormlight. Like in Stormlight, it's more of a consequence of your characters building your character's progression that they get stronger. In progression fantasy, it's I will be stronger because I want to be stronger. Join me on a 12-book journey.
I feel like that is very reductive. Like
It is very
about
ridiculous.
growing stronger. It's not necessarily about growing stronger for being just to be stronger. Oftentimes people have reasons they want to be stronger.
Okay, all right. I'll
Which,
concede
like,
that point.
Like with Lyndon, it's like he doesn't want to be stronger.
Lyndon is
Just
the
to
main
be
character of
stronger.
this series.
Oh, yeah, Lyndon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we should probably still leave with that.
Yeah.
He's the guy who wants to have the magicest powers of all.
Yes.
But
His name
for
is
a
Lyndon.
very specific reason.
Yeah, but yeah, those books are very much about becoming more powerful. So there are entire books in the series where the main goal of the plot is we want to gain another level in the power system.
So I am not an anime guy. I'm not a manga guy. I have tried both of these a little bit in my teen years, and they were just not genres that I found compelling. My understanding is that Western audiences might be most familiar with this wide genre of storytelling from pieces like Bleach, which I have actually seen quite a bit of. I haven't seen Naruto, but I imagine there is some of that stuff going on there. Having seen some of the gifs, I think there's power growth happening in there.
As I,
I
say,
mean,
for me, you go, Ian.
I hope this isn't the thing you were about to say, but I know for me, like Dragon Ball Z,
That's exactly
I
what I was
watched
going
as
to
a very small child.
That's exactly where I was going.
Yeah, that's a much better.
The
example.
fights
Yeah.
remind me of Dragon Ball Z so much, and there's so many. Do you remember in Dragon Ball Z, the Super Saiyan 3 moment where Goku reveals Super Saiyan 3, I feel like that happens like at least once a book, where it's like, here's this really cool jump in power that happens, and it's really cool.
To wrap up this slightly chaotic introduction, I assume everyone on this podcast would want to recommend this book to read.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like why I recommend it. It's like I had the feeling of, when you're 14 and you are like creating your OCs for the first time, and they are so, looking back on them, they are so self-indulgent and like and
what do
like
you mean 14?
Hey, look, the way I make OCs now is different than when I was like in high school. But like it was sort of like, and they have purple hair and they can do this and they can shoot lightning, and then they don't have to just shoot lightning, they can do all this other cool stuff too, and they have swords, and it feels like the most like self-indulgent, like, but completely without embarrassment. And it's like, oh, it's like it's pure id, and it like reminds me of like the best parts of being 14 without like having to be like embarrassed about it. It's just like, oh, you know what? Why not have purple hair and lightning and swords and stuff and all this kind of thing? It feels so fun, and it feels like the best parts of being 14 and when you're making characters for the first time. That's how it made me feel when I read Cradle. So just that's why I like it and why I recommend it.
Yeah, it's taking those cringy 14-year-old OCs and then making them actually good without changing what they are.
Yeah.
Unironically, earnestly, and great.
It's earnest, yeah.
So that it packs it in some really cool world building. Like I really, the setting of Cradle is very much designed to facilitate people smashing into each other with magic powers.
Yeah.
But it's a really cool setting, even like aside from doing that job. People smashing into each other with magic is baked into the setting very well, and
absolutely.
I will say for me personally, it was a series that took its time to grow on me.
Yeah, did it actually grow? Oh, I guess you're in this episode, so
I guess I am here. So yeah, I would say. The first time I tried reading Cradle, I ended up dropping it like 2/3 through the second book. Mm-hmm. So, not very far in a 12-book series. Yeah. I'd say if you are already liking the book by book 1, then you are probably going to enjoy it to the end. If you're not liking it by book 1, I'd say give yourself until like book 3. And if you still don't like anything about it by book 3, then it's probably not a series for you. Mm-hmm. But if you do like it by book 3, then it's only getting better.
Yeah, I was actually, after I finished book 1, I actually was like not sure about it. It was almost a whim when I was like, well, this is like $3. I'll read book 2, sure. And then book 2 is when I was like, oh yeah, okay. But I was like, after book 1, I wasn't totally sure I was going to keep reading it. So they're short enough that I think it's not a huge time commitment if you want to get to.
They go free pretty often.
They do. But for me, I have read all of these in audiobook form. Travis Baldry does a fantastic job. But when I first got exposed to it, it was because they were all on sale. So I bought the first one. Like, I still had to buy them, so it was. Oh, it was like
sucker.
It was like $2. Like the audiobooks never go for free, so it's like
okay.
So they were like all like $2 or $3 rather than like a full credit. Yeah. So it's like I got the first one because like I've been seeing people chat about this. Like I want to give it a shot, and I listened to it. It's like, okay, like is this something I'm gonna want to listen to? I think so. I'm just going to buy all of the rest now. It was cheap. And then I'm like, that was such a good decision. Because I'm like, these are amazing.
Yeah.
It is very worth bringing up that these books in ebook format regularly go free on a sale for free.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Literally $0 you can get. And this happens. So consistently, this happens before a new book comes out. So if you are a bit on the fence right now, or money is tight or whatever, wait. But you're curious, wait until a little bit before Waybound, which is going to be the final book in Cradle. There is a very good chance all of the 11 books before that will just be for free on Amazon for like a week or two or whatever.
Or at least
outside of that,
some of them.
Before a new one, all of the previous ones.
But I don't think
not these days when there's that many, but yeah.
Mean releases, some number of them usually become free as well. So keep an eye. It's as cheap as it gets, right?
Yeah.
The next step is Will Wight showing up at your front door and be like, "Here, have some books."
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're not sure when that happens, if you're on the Shard Discord server, the many fans the series has, he will not miss telling you that Cradle is free.
Yeah. I think for me, why I'd recommend the series is firstly, the reason I got into it was because Evgeni, I think you were just off reading one of the books and you were on a high from it, and you were like, "This is my favorite fantasy series outside of Brandon Sanderson." And I was like, that's high recommendation, and so that's enough to make me want to read it. So I read them. And yeah, for me, they're so, like I said, all the fat is trimmed from the books. It is just the cool stuff. And like sometimes I do wish there was a little bit more fat in these books, and that we did get to spend a bit more time out with these characters outside of just training and fighting and doing cool stuff. But they're so quick to read. I suppose I say eat. They're so quick to read. They come out so regularly. I'm like, in between reading other books, they are just perfect little, just a little snack, just a snacky book. Love them.
So I didn't talk about why I would recommend them, but I don't think I have much to contribute that others haven't said already. Cool characters, little fat, easy story, cool world building. I really like the world. I'll say that. I really like that the entire, not just Cradle, but the entire Willverse, it really feels like a Cosmere light type of thing, in that it's a multiverse, multiple series, very different series, hard magic systems, etc., etc. But I do want to talk about one other thing that makes Will Wight and the Willverse and Brandon Sanderson and the Cosmere similar, and that is the kind of on a more, not a meta level, but on a more personal level, the interaction between author and fans. Right? As Brandon fans, we are very used to like frequent communication and updates from Brandon, and kind of like this very personable relationship that we have with him and all of these things. And a lot of that, sometimes to a greater extent, now that Brandon is very busy, is something us Cradle fans find in those books and in this author. And this extends as far as having their own instance of the software that powers Arcanum. They have their own version of that. They call it the Abaddon Archive, where they collect...
Heleneum is the software.
Heleneum is the software. Yes, that's not important to anyone who's not a software developer. But they have their own archive of words of will, as they call them, and there's a lot. Like outside of Brandon and Will, I don't think you're gonna find another author who has as much communication and like, and they serve exactly the same purpose as the words of Brandon do for us, right? They expand on the world, they reveal hidden things, they show us things that could have made it into the books but didn't because they were fat that needed to be trimmed. There's a couple of like AMAs and Q&As where it's one of my favorite events in there was a world building AMA or Q&A several years back where it was just world building questions, and you can go and find so much more cool little things about the world that could never make it into the books. So,
I need to read that.
I haven't read there's stuff about like holidays and weird paths and historical events. Highly, highly interesting to read.
Yeah, we'll probably link this in the description here under this video if you want to go snooping. So yeah, with this out of the way, if you haven't read those books but we piqued your interest, this is the time when we stop restraining ourselves from talking spoilers. So if you want to read those books, then this is the time to turn off the video and go shopping, and you can come back to it. I don't know, it's probably going to take you like 2 weeks to read through all of those. So
First book is called Unsold, by the way, as in
if you're searching for it.
Yeah.
Or you can buy the Omnibus Foundation that has the first 3 books together. It has better covers, in my personal opinion. Yeah, with that, this let's move on to talking about the series proper, just without Dreadgod. Up to this, now we're talking up to Reaper. So with the spoiler disclaimer out of the way, let's get to the meat of things, or the plot. So where do we stand at this point?
Or the plot. Yeah, so from the beginning, Lyndon is trying to save his home, Sacred Valley, and so has to quickly leave. He meets up with Yeren, Eithan, and then eventually later Mercy and a few others. Did I pronounce it differently from you?
Yes, I say Ethan.
We're gonna have a talk.
There's an I there. It's Eithan.
It's
I say it Ethan.
Ethan.
Okay, Ethan's fine too. So he meets up with, he gets a posse, and then slowly he has to get powerful enough to defeat these giant monsters called Dreadgods. And so that's kind of his impetus for getting through the story. So he gets through, he gets super powerful, and that's basically the plot over most of the books, is he gets super powerful. And then there's also kind of this subplot called like with the Abaddon, and those are like they're basically gods, but they are still people who grew and rose up. And basically, these are the people who have progressed far enough that they are now existing in the cosmic level. They live up in space, and they're way more powerful than anyone who lives on the planet Cradle. And so there's this whole plot or subplot where things are going wrong in space, but out here on Earth, Lyndon and his friends are still trying to get through, and we're trying to see where we are until finally, at the end of Reaper, they have actually managed to face down a Dreadgod and at least pushed it off. So they've reached kind of the pinnacle of where Lyndon thought he was going to be right at the beginning of the book, and then right then, Eithan turns out to be one of the Abaddon, and he has to go back to space. And that's kind of the 30-second version of like what's going on here. Space. In my head, it's like space.
Not just like a member of the Abaddon, which is like this huge multiversal organization. Yeah. He is one of the judges of the Abaddon court, who are the tippity top. The court of seven.
Mysterious disappearance has been a driving point for that C plot for 11 books now.
Wow.
Osriel the Reaper.
Oh man.
You undersold that reveal. Like, I didn't think anyone can undersell this hard, but you were like, watch me.
Ethan totally just turned around and a ladder dropped next to me. I must go, my planet needs me. But then this is his planet, so it doesn't quite work, but
he flies off into space because he's a god. Yeah, so
it's not even, he doesn't even go to space, he like steps into Wilverse's equivalent of Shadesmar.
Yeah.
Which is more outer spacey.
So yeah, that's just for people who haven't read this far. We're assuming if you're watching this section, you probably have read the book, so we're not going to go too into explaining the plot.
You know what happened.
You know what happens, but if you're a spoiler, if you're the person who reads on spoilers, that's the overarching what's going on here in the context of everything we're about to talk about. Mm-hmm. That's the plot. They get stronger. They fight gods.
There was one more big reveal at the end of Reaper.
Ooh.
Which is that the Dreadgods, this whole problem, are a direct result of the monarchs, which is kind of like the top of the scale in terms of Cradle, that they are not meant to stay on Cradle. They're supposed to get off and go to space. But them staying is like, the world doesn't like it. So it creates hunger mod aura, and that leads to things like the Dreadgods.
Yeah.
Basically, it's like they're so powerful, they are actually causing the reality to warp and like
warping around them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the scale where the monarchs are putting so much power on it that the Dreadgods kind of form to compensate for it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's kind of, this is something interesting. It's called Hunger Madra, which I think is super interesting based on like the themes of the story, which is about the ambition of getting stronger. Everything is about ambition and like the desire to be more, be stronger, be more powerful. And that's kind of what was really interesting to me. It's sort of the ambition being the impetus for everyone getting stronger. But if your ambition is stagnant, it's sort of like, it's almost as if everything what our main characters are here for, which is they're here to get stronger and they're eventually going to leave the planet. But it's like the villains are the people who are not doing that. They're refusing to continue on and be more than what they are. And that's kind of, it almost feels like that's what the reality warping is. It's sort of like by the refusal to move on, they're not obeying like the laws of the universe. Be stronger, be more, get better, get more powerful. And they're just sitting where they are. And like, it's almost as if that is like the reality warping of like, now things have gone wrong. Your stagnant ambition is sitting here and it's created something really bad in this universe.
You have to have been a super ambitious. It's like, I always kind of see hunger metric as also kind of like greed. It could also have been called kind of thing. It's, they had that ambition to reach monarch level, but then now that they're at that level, instead of, they haven't got an outlet for that ambition anymore. They're just kind of that, now they're sat there and that ambition is kind of just manifesting in the world and breaking it.
Yeah.
At least on a thematic level, a lot of that is really cool and makes sense. And so the goals of the gang shifts, right? At the very beginning, we were like, hey, we need to get stronger, so we become strong enough so we can beat up these Dreadgods that we know are coming to Sacred Valley. And now the goal is, hey, we need to be a little bit more stronger so we can bully all of the monarchs out of this world, because if we don't, the Dreadgod problem is not going to go away.
Which is a realization Lyndon comes to, and then he is sworn to secrecy by one of those monarchs. And it's like, oh, this is how the monarchs have been keeping things quiet. It's like anybody who gets close gets sworn to secrecy magically, just so they can keep the status quo.
Should we start talking opinions, guys? Should we start talking about what we think of things?
Yeah.
Let's throw some opinions out there. Don't microwave your water.
Yeah, no, heresy.
Sometimes it's necessary.
It is never necessary.
Just don't have hot water in that.
Opinions. I can start with a take, maybe lukewarm take.
Yes, I'm waiting for this.
My lukewarm. I have several. I don't know if this is the one you've been waiting for, but my plot lukewarm take is that the Abidan C plot is my favorite part of the story.
That's a pretty cold take.
Okay, that is a pretty cold take. Yeah,
that's your favorite.
People
part?
like the Abidan.
Yeah.
I could skip it if I was like,
wow.
I'm like,
no, that's
really?
Yeah, I'm like, okay, it's there. I'm like, I see why he's including it. He's reminding us.
I'm kind of in the middle because like I think it's theoretically interesting, but I get a little bit bored of Suriel is sitting there in space having thoughts.
Yeah. Even when she's fighting, she's still just sitting there thinking because she just
I like Suriel so much. I really do. But it's like, what's going on is like, I like when things happen in the Abaddon plot.
Yes.
I'm like, ooh, it was like, oh man, I hate Machiel. He sucks. Every time he opens his mouth, I hate him. And every time something happens, I'm like, ooh, nice. But kind of things don't really happen that much. It's like, oh no, another world. I have to be sad about stuff is going wrong. Where's Osriel?
I don't think you're meant to be sad about all of these worlds. I think those scenes are there to give you a scope of, hey, this war.
Suriel is sad. Suriel is having lots of emotions.
She's a healer.
She's a healer, which I do love her for it. Like that's what she's there for. But it's just one of those things where I actually don't wish it for it to be more, but it's sort of, it's fine for what it is. And I don't think it should be different. I think it would be just it would just be a different series if she was the lead and this was the main plot. And if it was any less, it would be like, well, why is this here? It clearly has a purpose. It's kind of like the view of where Lyndon and company should be heading towards. And I kind of have this vibe ever since I was reading is like, is Lyndon gonna get powerful enough to join up and help her? So it's kind of like this interesting plot, but it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I don't need any more of this. She's just fixing worlds and fighting Vrosher and fixing worlds.
It's this interesting thing where like we start with Lyndon, who is at the complete bottom of the bottom, in our other view is Suriel, another of the judges of the Abaddon court.
That's very good. Yeah.
The very pinnacle of human achievement.
The highest
in
height.
the worst.
In
Yeah.
the multiverse. So it's just like the full spectrum of like. So Lyndon very much has a perception of like the peak that he can reach in Unsouled. It's like, oh, like what if I become gold? And then we learn it's like gold like ain't
Aged.
anything.
Yeah.
It's like that's for children. So it's like
Well,
he
rich
has
children.
his perception, and like we as readers can see where the judges are. And it's like, oh, this is just so far removed.
One of
And
my. Oh, there's more.
No, there's not.
One of my favorite things about the C plot, or it might even be a D plot with the Abaddon, is that we spend most of the time on Cradle, and like we see how powerful people like the sages and the heralds and the monarchs are. People who like you throw an obliterating like blast of energy at them, and they don't bat an eye. And then you go up to the Abaddon, and who are having their war, and they are destroying and recreating planets like as a part of their battle moves. Like they don't shoot beams of energy, they just wish things in and out of existence.
Yeah.
Suriel just casually bringing trillions of people back to life.
Yeah.
Yeah, Suriel,
like,
it's just like,
not a
it's
big deal.
that's the thing, it's very casual. She's just like, oh, business as usual, let me just reverse the flow of time and make this right again. Cool.
Yeah.
And now to fight the Roshir again, it's casual. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I always felt it could have, like, if there was, each book only had like one prologue or epilogue scene in the way, I think that would have been like, oh, just to remind me it's there. Whenever there's a normal chapter, which is a serial chapter, I'm like, oh yeah, forget that was part of these books. Yeah.
See, I'm very much on the side of like I like the serial stuff. I don't think there should be less, and I don't think there should be more. It's like very strategically placed to like so we don't forget about it. And I do think it is giving us the broader scope as readers. But one other thing like I want to tie into like this is the information requested bits
Yes.
at the end of
love
chapters,
that. I love
which is
those.
just straight world building
Yep.
Just
information a lot of the
info
time.
dumping in universe.
It's complete lore dumps, and sometimes it's like at the end there's a like continue with this other like very juicy title thing, and it's like no, you can skip that one. It's like
Request denied.
Oh,
Which
I
is
like it because it's sort of like this invisible sense of like it is kind of info dumping, but it's in the way that like you get the sense someone has like searched up this information, they've done a little Google search, and they're like, oh, okay, I've read this cool paragraph or two about like what's been going on here. Okay, I'm good. I got the information I wanted, and you kind of get the sense of like what this person is looking for, and it's like this invisible like, oh, what's Suriel kind of what's she looking up? She's keeping an eye on things down on Cradle, and
exactly that is what's happening. It's like she's
Yeah,
getting
and
like
it's-
information reports from her presence, which is like this secondary
a little
creature
AI.
thing.
AI assistant, essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, like, it took me embarrassingly long to figure out it was Suriel doing those Google searches.
Mhm.
So for me, those sections really worked because it gave this whole series a feeling like there is someone spying on our characters. How you know how, like, in some movies, you get, or TV shows, you get a scene and then the camera just pans back and you see this is being watched on, like,
You've
a TV
been looking at
monitor.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and this is
Yeah.
those info dump bits were giving me this sort of vibe, like,
Mhm.
who could be watching? I mean, of course it's Suriel. It took me too long to figure out it's Suriel. Early on, I was like, is there someone spying on the characters? Like, is there a mysterious person X who?
You know, if anyone has ever seen Person of Interest, they kind of have like the
Yeah.
same framing device where the machine is watching, but the machine is watching through security cameras. So sometimes, like, one of the scene transitions that they do is like they'll like move out and it'll be like a camera and then shifting over to another security cam and like this kind of like like Hollywood machine like interface look, but it like it's shifting over to another camera, and it's just one of those things that reminds you that like, oh yeah, the framing, it's like someone is watching. Which is like, it kind of reminds me of that. It's like, oh, it reminds you every time it happens that, oh yeah, there's kind of something bigger going on here, which I like.
And it becomes very funny, at least to me, once it's clear that it's surreal, and you realize eventually when she actually has scenes where she talks about watching Lyndon and Co, that this is less a mysterious conspiracy and more basically her like weekend soap opera that she's keeping up with because she wants to just know what happens next.
It's like he meets Fisher Geisha and she's like, who is the Geishas? Like, oh, okay, that's who they are. Okay, cool. Okay, carry on then.
Yeah. What's going on with...
It's like, it's one part like soap opera and one part like mom who is just checking up on like her kids' friends. It's like, is this somebody like my kid should be hanging out with? I was like, Google search. I was like, oh yeah, they're
it's
fine.
Very much she took responsibility for him. Now she's like, who is that? Who is this? How's he doing? Are they okay? Yeah.
She's basically a fan. She's basically a fan who sometimes just pauses the show and checks the wiki.
Yeah.
So all of this has been really interesting, unplanned and unscheduled, perfect segue into us mentioning some of our favorite or interesting or notable scenes. And I'm going to use this opportunity to not let anyone else speak before I can cast my vote. Because if I let them speak, then the segue is ruined. And the scene I want to bring to the table is the ending of Ghostwater. Right? That is the moment when I went from kind of enjoying these books, they're kind of fun, they're kind of popcorn, to going, oh, I am into this so much that like this is the kind of thing that I would be going to like midnight release parties and things like. I mean, if they had
them, parties. Yeah.
And you can see the perfect segue because we've been talking about presences. And Ghostwater, like, this landed so well for me. And yes, Will Wight planned that, like, this is the intended effect, and it worked so well on me, right? We spent nearly 5 books with these information requests or reports being interspersed, and we've built an idea of who the Abaddon are and what the presences are capable of in terms of just, like, knowing everything, right? And then at the end of Ghostwater, we spent a little bit of time with Dross, and I've never been a huge Dross fan, by the way. Like, I like him well enough, but I've never been a huge fan. Mm-hmm. And then
I like him.
The moment we get that information request, or was it battle report or whatever it was? Like that's and the font switch and the voice switch and all of that.
There's a font switch.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Information requests
are like bolded with different font.
Yeah.
With the
it's like it looks like the Stormfather text. You know,
I did not know this because I've only done it audio.
Oh yeah.
but it's so recognizable and just like it carries that like change on the things on the page carries so much additional weight with it that you're like, oh my god, is Dross a presence? He knows so much. What does that mean? What heck he do? Oh, he's bonded to Lyndon. Ah!
Mm-hmm. It was one of those moments where like something that you thought was like one of those god things that all of a sudden becomes in reach of like, oh yeah, I totally know what you mean. It's like where what the impossible becomes possible moments of like
it works
really
so much better for me than like any of Lyndon's level ups.
Yeah.
And like the funny thing about that is that as we now know, Ethan is Osriel. He is an Abaddon, and like he thinks he usually knows what's going on. It's like Lyndon coming out of Ghostwater with a presence was a total surprise. It's like one of the few things that catches him by complete
it threw
surprise.
him,
and it's just like
Take that, Ethan.
It reminds me of a scene in... I was going to say it's Skysworn, but the continuity doesn't work, so it must be later. But I think they were in the Skysworn fortress, and Dross points Ethan out to Lyndon when Ethan is like trying to sneak around and do a surprise entrance.
Yeah.
And so Lyndon calls him out, and he just shows up kind of skulking.
Yeah.
I think it has to be Underlord, that scene.
It must be.
Yeah.
Because in Uncrowned, they spend most of the time in the other flying fortress.
Yeah.
Not to be mistaken. But let's see someone else's favorite moment, scene, book.
I have
sequence.
3. I think I have on hand, and so
Okay.
I don't know if I want to go next to see if anyone.
I have 3. One's a favorite moment, and the other 2 are moments that made me cry. So you might want to go first.
I'll go first because we were talking.
Let's go one by one.
Yeah.
We'll do a couple of roundtables.
I'll just do the one. The final fight of Underlord is my favorite, most memorable fight of the series. The
Same.
3, I can't remember the names of any of the characters because I'm terrible. It's the 3 Underlords come hunting for Mercy, Yeren, and Lyndon, and Lyndon and Yeren have to do their Underlord revelations whilst whilst in the fight, although they were like seconds away from dying, and like that to me is one of the most memorable fights because the advancement to Underlord is different to the advancements. It is a almost like a Stormlight style personal advancement as well as just I trained a bunch and leveled up. It is a personal plot relevant advancement, and all the Lord advancements like that. That's why I like them. But Underlord was just that. It was that first one of they got to learn something about themselves, and the fight was good, and the guys they were fighting were interesting. I just remember the lady with the life scythe that was like
with the scythe,
who could like permanently take part days off your life. That was scary. That's the fight that stands out to me as like the one of the best fights in the series, and like.
She's also it's a really cool concept to have essentially like a Grim Reaper character, but she's on a life path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's great. Do we want to do more than one each, or because the other ones I have less to say about?
I do have one on lock, which is Ethan, probably my favorite character. Which we'll talk about favorite characters a little later on.
I love
but
Ethan.
The scene at the end of Reaper, where he's like crying, because it's like Ethan as Osriel apparently was a theory in the community that I completely missed. I was not aware it was a theory. I also didn't think it was a thing until like the few chapters before one of like the Osriel flashbacks, which is like where he got the shroud, the origin shroud. I'm like, he's Ethan. And then like almost immediately after, it's like he like got out the marble and it's like gave the command to like unshackle identity and all of that. It's like authorization 008. And I'm just like, it's so good. And like the scene also there is like the like a destroyer has come to the destroyer has come.
Yes.
It's just such a high energy moment. I'm just like, yes.
It was like
that
a very well built up review.
That I like the most.
Yeah, it was very well done. It actually kind of reminds me about like, because like one of the tip offs for me was Ethan, like the talking about not wanting to be alone. And that was the tip off, because that leads into my favorite moment, which is like earlier in the series when Ethan was talking, in one of those moments when he drops his troll shroud for a moment and like is just real talk with Lyndon and Yeren for a moment. He's just like, I'm lonely and I don't want to do this alone. And I was like, that was the moment where I was like, oh, these are real people. These are good characters in like this random like battle anime I started reading. Like that one really hit me hard. And I was just like, ever since then, I've just been like, yes, these are the 3. These are my babies. I love them so much. It was a really, really good emotive moment for me.
One of my favorites, I do have a few. Aside from that fight at the end of Underlord, no.
Oh, you guys really like that?
And one of the other moments I really enjoyed was the moment that actually got me to stick with this series was in Skysworn, the reveal of the first of the Dreadgods.
Okay.
It's when the Bleeding Phoenix like arrives, there's just this whole spectacle of sky turning red, blood starts falling from the skies, people are screaming, monsters are being born from blood. I was very lukewarm on the series beforehand because it was people who I don't necessarily like punching, I kind of like more. But then it was like, oh, there's a bigger thing here. There's this giant monster creature, and this is metal as hell, and I want to know more about it.
The Bleeding Phoenix. Wow,
Yeah.
that's incredible.
Yeah, that kind of moment where you kind of realize when they talk about the Dreadgods and they're like, oh, they're more like natural disasters instead of big monsters. It's like, oh yeah, no, this is happening across the continent. This is a natural disaster. This isn't just, oh, it's a big bloody phoenix. No. It like spreads blood eggs that kill people and make more blood eggs. You know, and
it's more like a super hostile weather event. Like if ever Storm was sending monsters actively to kill you.
Yeah, no, it's Sunny with a chance of bleeding Phoenix.
How do you with a chance of your blood turning into evil version of you?
To attack you. Yeah. That is low key actually like really powerful and also really, really terrifying. Because this is an interesting take on the whole zombie, not franchise, but like idea, right? Because one of the reasons zombies are scary, yes, they are people we know, but not, is the spreading aspect of it, right? Anyone you lose, and it's the same with necromancy. Any person you lose, you've lost two, because now -1 on your side, +1 for the other side. I do want to follow up on something Shannon said a moment ago, which was that Ethan scene where he kind of reveals a bit more of who he is as a person and as a character, which, fantastic scene, love it so much. There's a similar, I say similar because it's also Ethan kind of revealing more of himself, but in a very different way, scene that I want to bring up. And that comes in Black Flame, actually. It's kind of the first time we see Ethan show off a bit of who he is. We obviously don't see him in Unsouled. We see him in Soulsmith. But there, he doesn't do much. Like, everyone acknowledges that he's an Underlord, and Underlord is so much more than anything else that we have there, that he doesn't need to do anything. He just shows up, and people are like, okay. And then in Black Flame, we actually start seeing some Underlords around. And I'm reminded of the scene where he gets ambushed in the night, and they want to kill him. And they've got like a shield up, and he's depowered at that moment, and he looks around and goes, well, it's good that there's no one else here to see what I'm about to do to you guys. And then just proceeds to wreck the living hell out of the ambushers with a broom.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was scissors.
Could have been his scissors. Yeah.
But I love this. And this touches on kind of a general or a wider archetype that I really like, which is and those of you who are familiar with videos I've been on in the Cosmere will recognize that, and I will avoid spoilers, but there's a scene in Secret History where another character we've known as kind of jovial and harmless and funny goes ape. And like, this is, I love this. Like, it gets me every time. We don't get many of these moments in books, but this is a reveal that I enjoy a lot. Someone we've thought harmless and funny and just drops the mask, and it's instant.
I love
180.
the mask dropping. He's so mad. It was sort of like, because it's one of those things that, like, does he care about his clan? Because his one cousin Cassius is like, always like, Ethan, you don't care. You're such a jerk. Just be serious. And I'm like, well, no, he cares. He obviously cares. He's just doesn't.
This is how he shows
doesn't
it.
Need to show you. He doesn't need to show you that. He doesn't need to say the words, but his actions. Oh boy, he'll come for the enemies of his clan for sure. And that was
sometimes
great.
he'll come for his clan too.
You know.
This is the same book where he beats the crap out of Cassius.
Yeah, but he didn't kill him.
Yeah, they're cousins. It's fine.
They're cousins.
Yeah.
They just had a little friendly fight because
my cousins.
I wanted to do my second the one that I had, which was one of my favorite character choice moments. It was I think this is in Bloodline, the decision to go back and fight the Dreadgod is I love that moment because Linden's like trying to weigh up like the pros and cons. He's like trying to analyze anything about how he normally does, and he's just like, no, I need to stop overthinking this. I'm just gonna go do something stupid. And I'm like, I feel like my decision process, I do that probably too much, where I'm like, I'm trying to think about the pros and cons of making a decision, and I'm like, I'm overthinking this. I'm just gonna flip a coin, make a decision, just go for it, and then deal with the consequences if I have to. Yeah. And so I was sitting there, and I'm like, you go, make a stupid ass decision, and just go for it. I loved it. I thought it was great. So I'm sitting there being like, Lyndon, you idiot, I love you, but oh my god, this is so stupid. Oh man. But yeah, it was great.
One of the first moments that made me cry in this series, and it's sort of, for me, it's I do cry a lot, but I don't really necessarily cry while I'm reading books. Not even in Stormlight, really. But it's one of the things that really got me for the first time when reading Cradle was the moment in Skysworn when Lyndon's in the duel, and Jylong is obviously trying not to kill him and stuff, like that's fine, but he does take his arm. And it was like the moment after when like Lyndon is so mad, not at Jylong, but at Ethan. And and that moment really got me because Ethan's like, he has nothing to say. And he's just like that was me. Yep, I could have stopped this, but I had a plan. And it was just one of those moments of like Lyndon standing up for himself, and it was one of those things where Ethan like didn't brush it away, and it was like, so great character moment for one, but for two, it was just like there was a lot of emotion, and I was just like that rage, and just like you could have stopped this, but you didn't, and I was just so many like that really got me emotionally.
I have to agree here. Like, Skysworn is one of my favorite books in the series, and this is one of the moments that make it so.
It is one of the least rated.
It is easily my least favorite.
Yeah, I have heard that this is a lot of people's least favorite. Skysworn is one of my top 3. I'm not going to.
Oh man!
Oh wow!
I am scrolling through Goodreads, and it's shocking how highly rated all of them are. Like, Unsouled and Soulsmith are 416 and 436.
Wow, that's crazy.
Everything else is like 4.5 and above. I guess.
Yeah, most people don't like Skysworn, but I don't really keep track. I'm at the point where they've all blurred together, and I remember certain events are in certain books, but for the most part, they're just a blur. Everything after Ghost Water, I actually have no idea until we get to Reaper. They're all just one book from after Ghost Blood to Reaper. They're just
fighting and leveling up.
Yeah,
fighting and leveling up. And I think there's fighting. I think there's points.
There's a kiss somewhere.
Yeah. The hardest for me is Uncrowned to Wintersteel. I just know Uncrowned and Wintersteel are almost a pair where they just flow straight from one to the other, and I'm like I could not tell you what happens between them.
I remember very vividly like where the like division point between them is, because one of my favorite moments in the series happens right at the end of Uncrowned.
That's another moment I cried, because that's second on my list. I cried when
the moment I whooped.
I wasn't sad. Yaren whooped Lyndon's ass. Well, she wasn't whooping. They were actually very nice and equal, and she just happened to win. First of all, she should have won. Full agree. I know there are a lot of some people out there in a fandom I don't really interact with, so this is something I know about, but I haven't really witnessed. But some people are super mad that Lyndon lost that fight. No, he should have lost that fight. But I still had a lot of emotions about it, because it was really sad when, it's sad to lose, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think I would have felt
worse. Had a bit of a moment in the fight.
Yeah, it was a great moment. Great.
She was trying to coax him into like not holding back, because like a lot of what she's about is like fighting and giving it all, and he was holding back, and that was making her mad. This is one of the only chances they're gonna have that they can do it risk free. Like they're gonna whoever loses, they're gonna be healed at the end fully, because
monarchs who can do like the best healing. This is like maybe the only moment they're ever going to have to truly go no holds barred. And it was great. She happened to take the edge on that one. She should have won.
Yes.
I'm sad about Lyndon's feelings because like when you're sitting there just being crushed, like sucks to lose, but it's a lot of feelings. I cried and I really do feel for him, but I also agree he shouldn't have won. But it's really great tension between they're both friends and one of them had to win.
I also think that Garen winning is also just hugely important for the future of the series.
Oh yeah.
Because it sets the two of them on their path to become like a pseudo herald and a sage at Underlord. I think if their positions were swapped, I don't think they would have reached that point when they did.
Yeah.
Will admit that my reason for liking the scene are less elaborate and thematic and intelligent. Because for one, it's just a really good fight, and you don't. It's not very often that you get a chance to see two protagonists of your shonen battle manga go at it against each other without some very contrived reason for it or some rivalry that is probably forced at this point. So it was super cool to see those powers that were used against opponents that were weaker or stronger against each other. And also, as a noted Lyndon disliker, I very much enjoyed the fact that Garen was the one who won it. And it provided us some hilarious reviews from people who didn't like it.
There is definitely an entertainment factor of reading people complaining about
the infamous 1984 Amazon review.
Yes.
I'll leave it at that. Let's get some more scenes. I mean, the reason we are here is because we like the series and we want to talk about the things that we like in the series. So let's get some more.
The scene that made me go, I'm probably going to stick out with these books. This is really cool. I really like this. Is really early on in Soulsmith is Lyndon's iron advancement. When Ethan locks him in the room and injects him with poison for like a day. And like... That scene, I'm just like it like went on. Like he didn't like he did cut back eventually, but he didn't like cut back. He was like, this is hard for like Lyndon. Lyndon is struggling with this, and like it was hard, you know. And that was the thing. I was like, okay, I see where this is going. I'm like, this is like Unsouled. I'm like, if I had stopped reading Unsouled, I probably wouldn't. You know, I could have dropped out Unsouled and not like worried that I was missing out too much. But that was but sure, that scene in Soulsmith, I was like, okay, I see what's happening, and like I liked it.
The thing about that scene is like Ethan comes back with like the fifth Viper, and it's like I'm just gonna empty this into you. But it's like the scene. I don't know if it's an information requested or just a random scene from later on, and it's like the same Viper sect that actually like does this iron body. Yeah. It's like they do a single drop of venom. And it's like, Lyndon's gonna be OP.
Yeah. It was what's the famous last words where the guy's like being executed in history in real life, and like they're being executed by like rocks being put on him, and he's like, do you have any last words? And he's like, more weight. It felt like that scene where it's like, I can't remember.
Give me more. Yeah. Give me more.
I can handle it. Yeah. Loved it.
It's kind of funny because this is like legit one of my least favorite scenes in the series.
Yeah.
It's so good though.
I hate it.
Oh no!
Tell us, and then we can keep discussing because I have thoughts too.
There is more to this than the eye meets, Rasarr. Elaborate upon us your dislike.
I don't know if I can elaborate on without going on a rant that's gonna be better left for talking about characters.
Rant away.
We might not find a good time for it. Do the rant now.
Okay, so this was when I was reading Cradle for the first time. This was the moment I dropped the book. And I dropped it with much venom.
Like
because
4 Vipers worth of venom or?
I almost threw my Kindle at the wall. Well, specifically the slightly earlier, the moment that Ethan kicks Lyndon into the room and locks him in there, I was already not enjoying this plot because the thing about early Cradle books that really like threw me on a loop is that early Cradle books are just full of assholes. It's just people are just terrible to each other in those early books.
Yeah.
Like there's a has been a long time since I read Soulsmith, so maybe I am completely misremembering it and about to besmirch this book, but there is, as I recall, a moment where Lyndon tries to help people who have been captured by this sect, and then he gets caught, and Tergesha, who's been basically his mentor for this book, basically like, oh, Mao, get lost. You're not associated with me. I'm not going to do anything for you. And that's kind of what leads to the whole not being tossed in the pyramid. Ethan too, like in these early books, I hate early books Ethan. He grows on me like around Underlord. But in these early books, he's basically comes in and as this, it feels like he just decides to screw with Lyndon for the hell of it. Hey, there's this trope in fiction, especially in like fantasy where characters learn new things, of reckless child endangerment.
Yeah.
To give them magic powers.
Yeah.
And so there's this mentor who is just this asshole who would be definitely stripped of all his teaching privileges and probably sent to prison in real life. Because they decide that the best way to train their students is to almost murder them and put them in deadly situations over and over again. And I absolutely hate it. Because this is a dude who is basically poisoning a 15-year-old.
Yeah, but this is a world where 15-year-olds are already golds and have already taken in
my
poison.
Problem. That's part of my problem with the series. Yes. I feel like
this is a little bit of a tangent, but for me, the moment where I knew what I had to recalibrate and got what the world was actually in the first book. It was when Lennon had like tricked his way into the Heaven's Glory School. And, it was the moment when he and Garen make their plan to break out, because I was like, this is the moment where I realized, oh, this morality is not really like maybe other books. It was like when they decided to turn on them and it was like suddenly life or death and they were going to kill them if they had to. So that was like the moment where I was like, oh, okay, this isn't necessarily our version, like modern morality, because he made friends with the guy in the little museum thing, and he, so like it was like he was in another book. I'd be like, oh, now he's going to stay at the Heaven School for a while and learn a bit, but no, immediately like these people aren't good enough. We have to get out of here. And with this new girl who I just met, so that was my recalibration of like what this world is like. This world is full of jerks, and then everyone goes for their place of power, and then the Heaven's Glory School people were immediately like awful in a way that like, okay, now we're going to kill you, kind of unprovoked as well. So that was my sense. That was my recalibration of like what people in this world are like. They're here for power, and they have very specific delineations of like when you should be loyal to someone versus like when it's okay to not. This is like, normal, quote unquote normal martial arts, like super martial arts. Like this is something I've seen before. So I'm not super thrown by the asshole, martial arts master of like, if you want to be good, then this is what it's going to be like. And Lyndon keeps saying he wants this. And this is a choice where 15-year-olds do make this choice. This is a world where 6-year-olds make this choice.
For me, like this was my earliest problem with early Cradle. Gets better in later books since Lyndon gains his posse. But in those early books, there is just so many assholes. For me, this moment of like recalibration of like, oh, this is how I make those books enjoyable to me came in Black Film, actually, the later book. Where I was like, okay, this is not magic martial arts cosmere, this is magic martial arts Warhammer 40k, because this is the level of general assholery we are dealing with here.
Yeah.
I have two things I want to say. And one is like, I think one of the reasons why I do like the Venom scene is by that point I was already starting to like Ethan, and Ethan had earned my trust. So it's like I trusted that, like, okay, like he's not just doing this to be a jerk, like he's doing this for a good reason. So it's like I'm gonna go for it.
Is it fair to say that you thought he would pull Lyndon out if things got too dangerous? Or would you not?
Yes, like I don't like remember that too clearly. I just knew it was like, this is gonna turn out fine. Like I'm just gonna see this through. The other thing is, I agree that early Cradle books are full of jerks, but I think that is indicative of the world the Monarchs have created, and the reason later books are different is because Lyndon and his crew like have found each other and have found a better way, which is kind of a theme of the series. It's like that the example of the monarchs is a bad one, but it's the one everyone is following.
I feel like
the entire
first
thing Ethan is pushing for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The first few chapters of Unsold was sort of like the everyone here sucks. The Way clan is awful. And even people who are theoretically should be on his side treat him bad. So it's kind of like that's already the world. I didn't really need to recalibrate when Ethan came on. Ethan came on the scene. I liked him, and I thought he was doing this for good reason. For me, Lyndon has given enough consent. By the time the Venom scene came on, he was sort of like, if you can't keep saying I want this, I want this, I want this, and then oh no, I'm going to hurt you. Like that's the line. Not for me, because like he expects this to come with pain. Everyone knows this is supposed to not be enjoyable if you want to be the best.
While we are on the topic of this scene in Ethan, like he was kind of starting to like him throughout the first like 2/3 of Soulsmith. Like this moment where he tosses Lyndon into like the whole Viper scenario is the moment where he, as a character, he tanked for me so completely. Like I said, it took me until Underlord before I started to actually like him again. Like it was a character that I was enjoying, and he just fell headfirst to a character trope that I absolutely despise. Then just stuck in this well of this character trope until main characters get sort of closer to his level, where he, instead of being this trollish mentor, is also child endangerment mentor, becomes more of still a smarter guy, still with more experience and all that, but no longer get this sensation that he is deliberately throwing them into danger.
Well, for me, it's sort of being thrown into danger is the way everyone in this world grows and learns. So I never found Ethan to be particularly egregious or terrible. For me, the moment when, like the Venom scene, it never came across to me as just for kicks and giggles. This came to me as, this is him taking Lyndon under his wing. At the same point, it's sort of like, we can't have Lyndon be an autonomous human being and also just say this was something that was done to him. This was something he chose. And like that felt very clear to me, especially like, when the actual Venom part happened and not just being kicked into the room. Being kicked into the room and having to survive on his own was a different scene than the Venom scene. Those were two different scenarios. For one, like Ethan is actually there giving him the venom. Lyndon having to survive on his own was sort of like they need to see what he's made of. And then Yeren was like, at first is like, this isn't fair, but at the end of it, it's like, well, okay. Are you
like has to come around to it?
No, I'm fine with that.
Story so often Yeren is one of my favorite characters, and so often she is the one in those early books who is most critical of Ethan, and every time the story ends up siding with Ethan.
And I'm fine with that. That's great to me, because it's sort of, they are essentially trying to learn from him, but it's when they get older and more powerful is sort of when they have more ability to push back. And in this stage, it's sort of like when your master tells you to do something, do you do it or do you not? And this just fit right in. This didn't stick out to me as like, this is horrible and evil and wrong. This is, okay, well, he knows something we don't. And this is the way they learn, is by putting themselves into extremely dangerous situations. And that's kind of what they end up doing later, is Lyndon and Yeren start putting themselves into more and more dangerous situations in order to grow. And, it's sort of like, this is the way you leapfrog across power levels. And that's what Ethan was pushing them to do, so they could be more powerful more quickly, which is exactly what they say they want. So it's sort of, do you not believe them? I don't know. Maybe in this world we wouldn't, because this is our world and we like have laws about how we treat children, and they're great laws. Love them. In this world, it's a fantasy where they don't have child endangerment. This is where you like Yeren had much more choice. She was like stuck under like a lake and had to breathe through a straw for 3 days when she was like a baby, not a baby, not a literal baby, a very young child, to get her child. Well, not her iron body, her iron body that is
the steel
something body. Well, the important part is that it felt like Lyndon basically had consent, or gave his consent. What happened was sort of there were actually the checks in the actual Venom part. There were checks, and they gave Lyndon a choice. There's an argument you could be made. Was he coerced? Well, no, because Lyndon has it's a powerful character moment for him. It's sort of like, is this worth it? Because that's the moment. Is it? If this is going to hurt, if this is going to take this much work and pain and willpower, is it worth it? And then he makes that choice. Yes, I'm going to do this.
Yes, I am conflating the scenes of the Venom and the. It's thinking back on it, you are right. Those are two separate scenes, and the moment I actually threw the book first time was when Ethan kicked him in. I think I read the Venom scene afterwards, and I was still in this simmering outrage at the earlier scene, so they just sort of meshed together in my head. I suppose at the end of the day, it's less a problem with the writing itself for me and just the problem with world building. Just not asshole mentor trope who endangers the student is just not a trope I enjoy, so being a character was starting to full on this trope. Just your mileage may vary. It's just not my thing.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I do want to move things along a little bit. First, I have a weird duality with that sequence where I hate the asshole mentor trope, but I also don't peg Ethan as one of those. And I read and I see why that is. So I will go back to my cave and think why that is. But to take us out of this scene, I do want to do either one more round or just those of us who have additional thoughts. I want to give us one more chance to talk about favorite scenes or moments or things that we want to talk about, and then we'll see what else the outline has for us. And the thing that I want to bring up for myself is the thing that I would be remiss if I didn't talk about. And that is the point sage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Points. Yeah.
So, if you don't, I mean, there's no way you've read the book this much and don't remember the point sage. But this is how I differentiate between the Uncrowned Tournament and Wintersteel, because the Uncrowned Tournament is fighting in the arena, and Wintersteel is the points.
Cool. That is a very easy way of remembering those things, because I completely forgot that.
They go somewhere else, and Lyndon's like, points.
Yeah.
I must have them. I know this is something the fandom likes to meme about, and I get why it's memey, but I also it's kind of just like a fun intermission, right? So the Uncrowned Tournament was, or Uncrowned, the book, was very, maybe not very heavy, but it was a bit heavy, right? There were a lot of character moments there. There was a lot of growth. There were a lot of serious moments, and characters had to figure out how they feel about themselves and their place in the world, and also other characters who beat the crap out of them in the finals, all of that stuff. And then Wintersteel is like, let's take a break. Let's just go and punch some people for fun.
Yeah.
And also
murder some people
for points.
Well, sure. And obviously, the point sage is not canon, right? The canonical thing is Lyndon finds so much fun and enjoyment out of this whole, hey, everything in my life that I've loved and wanted has now been turned into a game.
Yeah.
I've wanted to grow stronger, and I've wanted to beat people up, and now I can do that, and I get arbitrary rewards, except they're not arbitrary because I can turn them into actual rewards, like elixirs and things like that, which is great. But then the bloopers, obviously, and the whole thing ends with Lyndon manifesting the void icon, right? But then the bloopers change that void icon scene to the points icon. And it's I am the points sage. Genuinely, unironically, I love this blooper. I think it is hilarious. I think the Cosmere doesn't stand a chance against this kind of hilarity. Get those sticks out of my face. Get those prohibitive laws against mating out of my face. Point Sage is the funniest crap out there.
Oh yeah.
I think Will Wight is funnier in terms of like when he tries to be funny, when Brandon
Definitely.
tries to be funny versus yeah. I do think it's great. I love when Lyndon, like, for me, like, the moment is like, it's a little weird because it's like this is war, and we know Yaren is going through something like really like this, like she has the A plot in Winter Steel, feels like the A plot.
Yeah.
Lyndon is kind of filling time, and it's sort of like, I love how Fury hands out like these point total, like this is like your sheets and this is what will count as points. And Lyndon looks at this list and immediately starts like going for efficiency. He's like, we don't need to like take on the big boys. We just have to like collect. And then, you know, he's like, just like the way he's like, he's not going to, he doesn't take like the spirit of it into account. Like he's like, okay, we need to fight all the enemies. He's going to the letter of the game, which is so Lyndon.
He immediately
he's like,
min-maxes. Like,
he min-maxes.
Yeah.
He's like, this is how
he's such a gamer, and that is so relatable in that moment.
Yeah, he's like, he takes like the skill of him and his team into account, and he's like, okay, so we're gonna split up, and I'm gonna take some of the big boys for like these points. We're not gonna go for the big ticket items because all the teams will be fighting over those. So we're gonna rack up the points, and we're gonna get these items. You know, it was like one of the things of like, oh my god, this boy.
This boy, yeah. I love
this
it.
boy.
Because it's almost like Lyndon doesn't have a huge amount of personality. I'm gonna like
we can talk about Lyndon in a bit when we talk about characters. Yeah.
But what I felt this did is Lyndon's like, I want to advance. That is like his whole thing. That's like his it's his Overlord revelation, I think. Or Overlord, or what's between under and over? It is over.
Under.
Yeah,
No,
it's
it was
under over arch.
Cool, yeah. So like this is like he advances. That's like what he does. And it almost felt like and it felt like it was that philosophy of his life just applied to a different progression system, rather than it being I advance through the advancements. It was like I advance through the points. That is what I do. And it was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is his personality manifesting outside of the usual. I'm advancing through the sacred arts, and yeah, it felt like it made perfect sense. And
it's also such like a fun way to explore that part of him in the book that ends with him manifesting the void icon of like the all-consuming void. It's just like, I just want to, because like this is also like he develops the consume technique in this book. So it's all building up to the void icon.
And it's also reminiscent of, and this is always not directly related, but at the end of, I think it was Reaper, when he had a little chat with Reagan Shen. And one of the things he said was like, well, the difference between the two of us is that Cradle is not enough for me. I want more.
I hate to be the negative Nancy again, but like I don't feel like points.
Do you though? Do you hate?
I feel like our tastes feel completely opposite, yet we still both end up liking this series. And I don't know how. I like what's the core difference between us here? I'm like, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
What's up?
Cradle, it's a book for many different types of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I without like going into another long tangent, I feel like Winter Steel for me has a tone problem. That what Evgeni said earlier, like how The Crown is this serious book and Winter Steel is this easier one. Which to me feels kind of weird, where one of those books is a tournament arc and where you can't die, and the other book is a war against a Dreadgod. I did not like the point system, because one, it felt like it like tightened the book in a way I didn't enjoy. For the second, yes, it did reveal something about Lyndon's personality, and to me that revelation was that he was a psychopath.
Yes, but that's why I love him. That's why I love him.
He doesn't strike me as a psychopath. He strikes me as someone who wants to advance, and that's exactly what he looks at. He was given a tool. The points are a tool to, if you get this, we're going to give you advancement material. And he's like, what? He's not going to not fight them. He was already going to fight them for the Akura clan. You know, like the killing them is fine. Like blame the guy who made the points. You know, it's sort of like, I don't blame anyone for looking at this and being like, okay, I'm going to get this. You know, it's, they were handed a bribe to, we want to encourage and motivate you guys to kill our enemies. Please do this.
I wouldn't call Lyndon a psychopath like 90% of the time. It's like this Winter still read really weird to me. Like, I get how this is in character for Lyndon, but somehow it felt out of character for Lyndon to me. I can't... I don't want to elaborate, and I even don't know how to elaborate, but that whole section felt so weird to me.
Okay.
Can't really explain properly why.
On the psychopath thing, I just remembered, so I got one of my friends to read the series, like, very recently, and he got halfway through Unsold, and he was like, is Lyndon a psychopath? and I'm like, my immediate thought was, I thought of the points stuff, and I was like, how did you tell this early? And his reasoning was like, he was like, Lyndon never seems to describe his emotions very often, and I'm like, yeah, that's fair, because it's the fact that got trimmed.
He's very objective about a lot of things, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, on that note, I think we can move on to talking about characters. And there is quite a lot to talk about characters, starting with our boy Lyndon.
Yeah.
Let me start by saying that Lyndon is probably my least favorite character in this whole series. I am not reading these books for Lyndon. I am reading these books for everyone else.
I feel like Lyndon feels like white bread. Like,
yeah,
I don't like to say he's my favorite character. I like him. He does the job. He gets us through these books. He does cool things. You know, yeah.
I'm like very much in the same boat as Ben, where it's like, I like Lyndon, like he's fine, like not my favorite character, but like I like that he is the main character.
Yes, yeah.
That like he's the one carrying the narrative.
You know that metaphor of prose in writing that Brandon uses sometimes? How his prose is a transparent window and other authors are a glass pane or something, like a stained glass.
Yeah.
Lyndon is kind of a neutral, not empty, but like not very colorful or spicy vessel for carrying the story forward or delivering the story to you. And all of the people around him are where all of the fun and funky stuff happens. And so I was going to say there's not much you can hate about Lyndon, but apparently we're about to hear about what the things you can hate about Lyndon in a moment.
I like him, so I'll save mine for last.
Yeah.
But generally, he's not like, in my experience, he's not very well liked, but he's also not very hated. And so he's fine as like a neutral delivery device. This being said, Rasarr, how do you feel about the things that I just said?
See, for me, those qualities you just listed, that he's a neutral delivery device, are kind of a problem to me, because my feelings on Lyndon are most of the time I don't care for him. And some of the time I actively dislike the fact that he is in the scene and he is the main character.
I'm interested in
I have a running list in my character.
Yeah.
I have a running list in my head of characters I would rather be leading this series. My problem is he's kind of bland. For me, he hogs the screen time that could be spending with characters I personally find more interesting. And the story... Lyndon comes in 3 modes in the story. He's either underpowered and needs someone to carry him through the event. He's overpowered and he is carrying everyone else through the event. And that is a very rare moment, he's actually on the level with the thread or like just below where it's interesting. And it feels like the first 3 books especially, as he is in Soulsmith, I have no idea why Afan picked him. It felt to me at the time unearned. He's an underdog character. Like, I get that. He's an underdog character. He gets underdog privileges from being that character, at least like the meta sense of what I am okay with character getting away with. character having powerful allies, that's okay. Then at the end of the second book, at the start of the third book, he's adopted into one of the most powerful families in the corner of the world he's at the moment. They keep pouring those resources and power into him on Afan's request. It feels like a real-world equivalent would be someone who suddenly gets adopted into rich family and gets a trust fund. And the story still feels like it's acting as though he has underdog privileges, narrative standpoint, when he no longer feels like an underdog to me, just a character who is not powerful. The more powerful characters hang out with for some reason. Yeah,
is the term underdog really important to his character? Does it matter that he's not an underdog?
I mean, the problem isn't that he is an underdog or he's not, but it feels sometimes like the story treats him like one because it keeps giving him stuff. Like he gets all those elixirs, he gets mentor, he gets access to the training course, he gets Ghostwater, he gets his own presence. Like locking Lyndon up in Ghostwater is like locking MacGyver in a store cupboard, like tool store. Of course, this is the best thing that could have happened to him. And know that a lot of people have told me that Lyndon is meant to be like a child by the standards of this setting. I just don't find that very interesting. Then in Ghostwater, he gets all this power boost from being in Ghostwater. And from then on out, we are more often in the second Lyndon mode, which is Lyndon being above current threat level to the point where I just don't find the fights that he's involved in interesting because he has his own like predict win button in the form of draws. Is treated like he's underpowered, but he unleashes this that he's overpowered on them. And I think it's at its worst in Winter Steel, where basically he's the one who turns tide around and he's overpowered, in short. The scenes, and it feels like it's sucking out the air from the room from other characters, because then, like, why is everyone else here if Lyndon just comes in and mobs the floor with the enemy?
Yeah, but that's kind of the world, isn't it? Like, a lot of the world is built on the premise.
There's nothing about Lyndon that's like super special, or he's getting a lot of the same resources that plenty of other people in the world do. It's sort of like, for me, the start of the story is he's being held away from all the resources that many people take as just normal. So it's not like I don't see the point of making him go through the entire story being like having all the resources held back from him. What I see is like what happens for me is he gets all the resources that other people take as normal and like what they should have. This is the kind of thing Lyndon should have had access to, except like with interest, because it happened to be the Aurelius clan. So it's sort of like, to me, that was like it's interest being paid on all the things that were denied him as a child, or up to where he was at this point, which is, how old is he? 15? 15.
I get that, but at the same time, while I understand that this is just how this world works, this over-reliance on like elixirs and pills, it's a classic of the genre, and it's also something I don't really like. I just don't find it very interesting.
I just don't think it's Lyndon's problem either. Like that's not a problem I have with Lyndon's character, which is kind of the subject. It's everyone has elixirs.
How is like Ian's journey, for example, different from Lyndon's? Other than, so by the time we are in Skysworn, they are on about the same level, or maybe Ghostwater, they're about the same level. And from that point on, both of them participate in activities that result in them getting pumped with resources.
Like, to me, okay, so it's not just that these elixirs and stuff are a Lyndon problem to me, just that I find Lyndon's character to be boring, and because we are focusing on him and we keep pumping him to be on the level with the other characters, it ends up feeling like Yerin to me is a more interesting character, and I feel like for example, in Ghostwater, which is, like I said, the story where the like balance changes from Lyndon being mostly underdog to mostly overleveled to me, and also one of my least favorite books. Lyndon gets locked in a room with all the resources he needs to advance, meanwhile Yerin has to scrape by and keep sneaking around the island and take care of Mercy, and she has to face the dragon without access to any of the resources. So it feels to me like her advancement is more earned than Lyndon's, because he's basically on a spa retreat in a cave.
But he very much is not. There's so many people in there that want to kill him. And like dangerous
not
creatures.
In a room where they aren't there.
Yeah, because
he didn't feel to me like he was the same level of like danger as Yerin was.
For me, but you know, like that's one book, and then it's like the whole series. For me, it's sort of like Yerin actually had all those things that Lyndon did. She just got it spread out more over time. Lyndon just happened to get it all at once, and that's kind of how I see it.
And you take Wintersteel, and Wintersteel is the opposite. Like the entire, like we meme about the points, but like Lyndon spends the entire book working towards progression, while Yerin is like on a hilltop in a mountain, just getting
handed gifts,
shoved elixirs.
Getting gifts and elixirs, and like, here's all the stuff to get you over to the next one. Here you go, Yerin. Here's all your sacred treasures, and you win all this great stuff. And here's your healing.
The Blood Madra, and have Moonbridge, and
I feel like I think for me the same type of arc worked better for me, because she has to be dealing with Ruby, which is more. No, it just felt better to me. I think it's at the end of the day. I think the problems I have with Lyndon really just boil down to the fact that he is a character who, because he's so powerful and because he's the main character, ends up picking up page count that I wish was devoted more to characters who I personally find more interesting.
Anyway, so I like Lyndon. I kind of got it from the beginning. It's like the classic like hook of like, oh no, everyone dislikes him and things are so unfair, and you know, it's sort of like, and that gets me because I'm like, oh my god, why are they being so unfair to Lyndon? You know, like it's sort of like that hook of like, okay, you got me. This is the classic character of like, I understand. Bottom rung of
the ladder.
Yeah.
Now I feel for him, and now I want him to be cool and powerful, and no one can hurt him again. I get it. For me personally, I don't mind that he's like kind of single track mind, because I don't think he's that single track. It is the thing he cares about most in the world, but it has a context of he wants to stop the Dreadgods from hurting his valley, even though they suck. You know, and the kind of thing of, I don't think ambition or a desire for power is inherently a negative thing. I think it is just kind of, I think it's interesting in its own right, and it can be used for either. It's morally neutral to want to be powerful. In my mind, I think we associate ambition and the desire for power with villains, but this was kind of like, this is a different world where everyone is trying to get more powerful. His desire is not unusual or negative. It's something that everyone in the world wants. And I kind of really liked the way, for one thing, like the way he's so single-minded is the way we actually get explanations on how things works. He wants to understand this new power, so we understand the new power. You know, and he spends a lot of time just thinking about like, how do you get more powerful in this world, where we're going to see, because Lyndon is going to show us how you get more powerful. And I find him very inventive. I really like whenever he's soulsmithing, which comes up basically in the second book. Like, this is something his mom did, and he wants to learn how to do. It's not necessarily, what I like about it is that soulsmithing, if I was in the Cradle world, I would not be interested in this at all. I think this is kind of like, it feels like a side quest. I don't think, I was like, how can you be more powerful with just making stuff? I don't think this, it's not interesting to me. But Lyndon chooses this path, even though like to me it seems like the less efficient way to get more powerful, because it's something, it's just, it has like a family thing of like, this was, his mom was his safety. His mom was like probably one of the few people, his mom and his sister basically were the only people who treated him well. And so like I totally get like the association he has soulsmithing with something very positive for him. It was very like, so I really liked that was something he was drawn to. He wants to build, he wants to, and it's something he gets really good at, is like thinking of like how he's going to create. And I really like that about him. And I like that he gets powerful, and I like that he cares about being powerful. I think it's just, it works for me.
To add to that, so I don't just go completely just hating on Lyndon. I do agree with you. I do like that he's ambitious, and I do like whenever he goes into soulsmithing. I wish we spent more time with either part of this. Like, for example, occasionally the book makes noises about how Lyndon is overworking himself. I think like it's either Gesha or Cassius who gives Ethan a spiel about like, you are overworking these kids. Where was the last time they did something other than train and practice?
Yeah, that's Cassius.
And I really wish they did lean into that more. Like that he's ambitious. I'd like to see more of like what this sort of overworking himself does to him.
That does happen a little bit in the background, right? We are told that he works really hard, but most of what we see are like the fruits of those labors. And Winter Steel comes to mind again, where he's leading the team and he's like losing hours because he is going and hunting remnants in my head it's like a maze, but it's the hunting grounds essentially, right?
Yeah.
And he's losing time because he's building constructs, and also he's taking on extra tasks to keep the team ahead and all of these things. So it's explored a little bit there, but for the most part you don't get to see that. And yeah, I think more silksmithing would have been cool.
Yeah.
Because I think you get a little bit of the power of this profession, as it were, in when we see Reagan Shen, because he is a soulsmith, and his entire path is based on like sacred treasures and artifacts and constructs. Obviously, he is immensely powerful himself as a monarch, but he's not the punchy shooty type of guy. He is. I have a rocket launcher that I built, and it has your name on its nuclear.
It's specifically designed to kill you. Like,
yeah. Speaking of anime references, if you are a Fate fan, then Reagan Shen might remind you very much of Gilgamesh from Fate. The same thing where Gilgamesh also, his superpower is that he has a key to a library of sacred treasures.
That's cool.
The Tony Stark effect, right? Money is the best superpower. Let's go talk about a character that we like more than that.
Universally.
We've talked about Ethan a lot throughout the episode, and I don't think there is much we need to add. But is there anything that we want to? Because I want to just like mostly skip over Ethan because we've talked about him so much.
I like his
He is my favorite character.
He is my favorite character because, like, I did tease I wanted to talk more about him earlier. So right. The fruition of that is that Ethan as a character just draws on so many tropes that are just yes for me. It's like the emphasis on perception, like the Aurelius bloodline legacy, like he sees everything. He has access to so much information that he doesn't share unless he needs to, which anybody who's watched Diceborn or Discord Adventure Game podcast like might see, like, this is a character concept I really like. Mm-hmm. Is it problematic? Maybe, but it's fun and I love it. And also, now that we know he's Osriel, it's like that. But like we've saw all along is like that inner darkness to him. Like it's like we see it with Hoyd periodically. It's like the Doctor from Doctor Who has this, and it's like when like they lean into that, it's like yes. And like there's so many characters that are like in this same archetype, and I was like every one of them I love.
Mm-hmm. You gotta have like the troll face on the outside, because otherwise it doesn't mean anything when they drop the mask. It, like that moment, I always love it. It's sort of like, you know, like when a song reaches its climax, the highest point. You can't enjoy like that moment in the song without having listened to the first 3 minutes kind of thing. It's when the mask comes down, it's like crack. I'm like, this is crunchy. I love this. I want to dive in and just live in this moment. I love it so much. But it was like I had Ethan pegged basically from his first scene. He's not even interacting with someone. He's just walking around the town in Soulsmith, like and like paying attention to people. And I could just tell immediately what kind of guy he was going to be. It was just
and he's doing little things right. He's setting the ladder for the person who's going to fall. He's giving a flower to this lady.
And he's paying attention to other stuff. And and the way he's thinking about people and interacting with people, I'm like, oh yeah, this guy is a huge jerk and I love him so much. But, in the kind of way that, the good guy protagonist, I think like in TV tropes, this would be called like the guile hero in some ways. He's actually super powerful and doesn't maybe qualify, but it's like the same way some of these guile heroes are just complete jerks and like they're masters of like misdirecting people away from the topics they don't really want to talk about, and they'll be huge jerks while smiling the whole time to get their way, which I'm like, all right. Because what I love about these characters is like, for one, I can take it as a given that they actually probably are a good guy, and like in Black Flame that was proven. I was like, yep, this is exactly the man I thought he was going to be. He cares about his clan and cares about their progression and is going to be there to protect them and all of that kind of good stuff. And that means I can enjoy the trolley parts even more. I just, for me, it's like, I love these characters. They just feel so rich. And I have loved Ethan from the moment he stepped on screen.
It's a bit like Kelsier, isn't it?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Kelsier's not my favorite, but I would agree more with the Hoyd. He's a little bit more all-knowing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he can, it's almost like he can pick and choose the way he wants to present himself to whoever he's interacting with at the time. He has a different face for every situation. And that's why I really, really like the moments when he puts them down and like he wants to be friends with Lyndon and Yaren, but he needs them to be a little bit more adult. He needs them to be a little bit more grown up and powerful, but that's what he wants. He wants to have a friendship. And I'm like, oh, this is it. I love him.
It's very difficult, if not impossible, to have a relationship of any kind, romantic, friendly, familial, whatever, when there is a massive like power gap between the people, right? So if you want that, you gotta, and if you're on the top, like you gotta bring the rest of the gang up.
And I kind of appreciate also that he doesn't try and take. He is like their mentor in a sense, but like he never tries to take the parental like even controlling like vibe with them. He's not going to tell them what to do. He actually keeps like his hopes for them and his future with them like really on the down low until like. It almost feels like he's waiting until he's certain about them and like, are they going to be capable of reaching me? And it's sort of like when he reaches that moment of like, okay, yeah, I think these guys can make it the whole way. That's when he shares like his heart. He's like, I want to progress with people. I want to not be alone. And I think, and like, I love that he likes them. He's like, aw, Lyndon and Yaren, I love you guys.
Like, you guys.
Chip. I love that Yaren and Lyndon are like just like, get out of here. I love that Yaren is like always so like, I love that she's like so vicious, but it's so good. I love it. I love the trio.
What book was it that oh, there was a running gag through, it may have been Reaper, where people were just literally physically kicking Ethan out of the room or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it was a Reaper,
I think it was.
Yeah.
I think I said a lot about Ethan already, but I will just say it did take me like until like Underlord for him to grow on me. And in fact, I think like in Black Flame was way too controlling and like sometimes felt like he took the agency of the narrative from Lyndon, basically pushing him onto the Black Flame path. But he grew on me with time when the power gap between him and Lyndon and Yaren grew shorter. The most amusing thing, at least to me personally, is the very reason I actually finished this series. I picked it back up after that, book throwing moment in Soulsmith, because when Reaper came out, I was just blissfully clicking on all the spoilers, and I found out that Ethan has this massive secret. I know you're shaking your head, Argent, but I didn't intend to read those books at the time, so it's not like I was looking at spoilers for something I was planning to read.
Yeah, that's still morally wrong.
And sometimes a good spoiler is the perfect incentive to read.
Exactly.
I don't disagree.
Got spoiled on the fact that Athan was Osriel. I was like, hey, I am intrigued. I want to see how this comes about. There's actually a lot of the moments I can't really enumerate them like right now on the top of my head. It is very fun to read the book knowing that he's Osriel and think like his oblique remarks and thoughts into this. Oh, he's actually an extremely powerful like dev god from outer space.
Yeah. There's a moment in Soulsmith, like in his introductory scenes, I believe, where we are in his POV and he walks like I think it might be the intro where he walks down the street and is like, oh, there's no one in this place who is on the same power level as me. Which gets really funny when you find out he's Underlord. It gets really funny when you find out he's Osriel.
Well, like, the other like really interesting thing along those lines in that opening scene is when he notices Suriel's marble.
The marble, yeah.
And he makes the comment, it's like, oh, it must have been made by somebody on my own level. Which like
I think that might be the one that I'm thinking of, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, oh haha, like he thinks that was made by an Underlord, and it's like, no, like literally on his level. And that's what drew him to Linden. Like he trusts Suriel's judgment. It's like, hey, Suriel likes this guy. I'm gonna look into him.
So really, who gave Linden the leg up was Suriel. Well, she did bring him back to life. So I mean, I guess in every single.
It's a bit of a leg up, yes.
It's all Suriel's fault.
The biggest leg up was bringing him back to life.
That helps. That helps a lot. I love it when healing goddesses of healing bring me back to life after someone invades my world who's not supposed to.
Yeah,
and chops your body in half, and you see yourself as your head falls. I'm like,
moving on. That's a scene in the soul.
Yeah. I have a Yeren thing I want to talk about. And I think
Yeren.
Let's
go Yeren.
I really like Yeren. I liked her less in Bloodline and Reaper. I felt like after she fused with Ruby, I felt like Will didn't quite know what to do with her. And because I felt like all she did during those books, this was the flattenization thing that I kind of talked about. And I think every time I read one of these books now, I have a message with Ian and Shannon where I'm like, I complain about Yeren. The whole metaphor and phrases thing that she does, where she like, or everything is like a oh, I don't like the cut of your jib, or it's like oh,
folksy. She has like folksy little
phrases that she says. I feel like that wasn't as prevalent in a character previously, but then in those two books, it felt like it's every line. And then I counted in Dreadgod. This complaint doesn't go into Dreadgod because she has a really good arc in Dreadgod. But the first 5 lines she says are all these types of phrases. The 6th line isn't because she just says no. And then the next 4 lines she says are all these like little phrases. And I'm like, I don't like this. This is too much. You can say them every so, but I'm sitting there and I'm like, can you just talk normally? Just for like a little bit. Just like a little bit, please. But yeah, I don't like it as much. And I feel like it's a Ruby fusion thing because I didn't notice it before, but I definitely started noticing it after the Ruby thing. And I
definitely thought it was there a lot in the early book. Like that was also character defining. But I haven't like looked specifically.
That's the thing is I haven't gone back to check, and I probably should before I made this complaint. But
that'd be interesting.
Yeah, it's
There's one book left. The perfect excuse for a reread of the entire series.
Exactly. I probably will actually before Waybound. But yeah, I was worried about Dreadgod, but then she had a really good arc in Dreadgod, so I didn't mind it as much.
I didn't notice it as much, and I will say Yeren is one of my favorite characters in this series completely. I do like her folksy sayings, and I do like that she is more brash and less polite than most of the rest of the cast. And so it didn't jump out at me. Like thinking back on it now that you said it, I definitely And remember that, it seems to have increased a bit in intensity. I never really minded in the first place, so I don't think I paid it that much attention. Yeah, she's cool. Erin is cool.
She is cool. She is.
She does cool sword things.
Yeah.
I feel like the book really overuses the phrase, her sword rang like a bell.
Yeah.
That's like her super move.
Yeah.
It's always cool when she does it.
It always is. It's like the thing where she cuts her hair using it. Like, that's cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
And it's not the sword, like, it's the sword madra or the aura.
The sword
in
arm.
The ambient.
Yeah.
Oh. I love her sword arm.
Yeah, she has sword arms.
Yeah.
She doesn't
The ones
use them as
growing from
much
her
anymore.
back, those are so cool.
Yeah, but lots of gold signs are just for fun.
Yeah.
He's kind of unique in that she kind of has like a functional gold sign. A lot of people don't.
I think there was a path with like literal storm clouds over people's heads.
Yrinn rules, like, for the first little bit, she's like the grumpy but heart of gold mentor to him, or older, like not older sister, but like older student. Like, they're like, you're a freshman and she's the senior, and she's just like so cool, and so she's just like, I just love how grumpy she is. I love how that she's just the no BS kind of character. She cracks me up. She's just like, she'll be mean and try and like help Lyndon out, and she's like, oh, you idiot, this is what you have to do, but she'll tell him what to do, and then she'll fight Ethan on his behalf or her own behalf. She's just like the no BS person, and it's actually like really, what got me a lot was her one of her, I can't remember if it's the Underlord or Overlord, I can't remember what they're for, was the kind of like, I am not my mentor, and like that was devastating.
Oh yeah.
It's like, I am not the sword sage was like, that really hurt, just the way she had to confront the fact that she's gonna turn out to be different than her master. And like that was crushing to her because she loves him and misses him so much, but she has just a lot of.
I think that was Overlord because that led to like her and Ruby figuring things out.
Yeah.
Because she's like, I'm not just sword person, I'm also blood person.
Yeah.
She has like, for me, she has my favorite like character arc with her relationship with her blood magic. And she has the cool powers. I am always down for some cool sword magic.
Yeah.
And she has this like grumpy, takes no BS personality that I really enjoy. So she is all around my favorite character in this series. And the early books, she carried me through them.
I don't think I have much to say about Yrinn. She's very straightforward, right? And a lot of the things that she is and she does, I don't personally relate to, because she's kind of the more traditional protagonist whose solution is to punch things or things and ask questions later. But she's, of course, not the protagonist, right? She's
kind of reminds me of like Toph, Toph from Avatar. It's sort of like she, in the way that she is just so straightforward. Toph is always telling Aang, like, it's like, you don't think about it. Don't try and be cute or clever. You just have to get stronger. Go straight through. And that's what Yrinn is like. He's just like, you can't trick your way into getting stronger. You can't plan your way into getting stronger. You just have to progress and progress the right way.
I will say that I wish we had gotten more, or maybe not more. I wish we'd gotten a different exploration into her relationship with her blood shadow. Because I think as a concept, I love the idea. Like, there are, culturally speaking, there are types of like magic in fantasy that we associate with good and evil, right? Healing magic, light magic, usually good. Blood magic, death magic, usually bad, right?
Yeah.
And therefore, we apply that to the practitioners of those magics. And so having a character who was a practitioner of blood magic, who was a good character and a main character, is really, really cool. And I love that. But I don't think we have enough of like
that blood magic.
Essentially, we don't have enough of Ruby in
Oh yeah. Yep.
Right. And so I wish we'd had more of it. Yeah.
No, I see what you mean. I feel like there wasn't a lot in between. The blood shadow is really scary, and this is an awful thing to do. And then we have a quick like, oh, maybe I can be different from my master. And then 2 seconds later, it's like, and now blood magic is good, and we're gonna merge. Yep. I feel like I wanted a little bit more than just like the one scene of like, how can blood magic be good, or how can we prove that it's just a morally neutral thing and not like these freaks who worship the phoenix, the bleeding phoenix.
And it also would have helped to have like more blood Madra like paths out, because like we are told that it can be used as a healing path, if I recall correctly.
Let's see a blood healing path.
We don't see that. Yeah. So
my thoughts on Yeren are very similar to my thoughts on Lyndon. In that I don't want to call Yeren bland, because she is not. But like, she kind of is a counterbalance to Lyndon's sort of blandness. So like, and they strike a good balance of like, okay, like we have this duo, this is our baseline, and then we add in like extra weird things periodically.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
But like they form a stable foundation together. Yeah, in a way I like. But like, I don't like. She's not my favorite character. Like, she's fine. I like her.
Lyndon. It would be a lot harder to just forgive Lyndon's bit of bladness if Yeren wasn't there. And yeah.
And likewise, I think a book of just Yeren, like, could easily stray into too much.
See, I was thinking of saying that, but then I was like, actually, no, I could read a book of just Yeren as the main character. I like Yeren. I think she's cool.
I feel like it's kind of like my thing with Surreal. It's like I don't right now, given what we have of Yeren and Surreal, like I couldn't imagine more than what we have. It's like I can't make that work in my imagination. I can't imagine a world where Yeren is actually the main character. It's just so much about how it's gone. Is like she doesn't have that drive to do the impossible.
Yeah, and
she's kind of conventional.
That's not how I would have phrased it, but yeah, when you think about the overall plot of Cradle, it is Lyndon like pushing things forward. Yeren is a huge contributing factor. Like she does a lot of the heavy lifting. She is the knowledgeable one, at least at the beginning. But the person who's going, let's do this thing, is usually Lyndon.
I feel like Yeren could carry her own story, but it would not be the same story that we've been told in Cradle.
Yeah. She doesn't have the same motivations. Like Lyndon wants to like get everyone on a super power level and then maybe leave the world or whatever. Yeren wants to care for the people around her and herself, and figure out what's up with the Sword Sage and things like that.
Now that we've got the main trio out of the way, how about that supporting cast, eh? Let's do a round table of it. Favorite characters that are not one of our main trio.
I feel Mercy's an easy one. Don't know anyone who does like Mercy.
Mercy's an easy one, yeah. She's kind of the cheerleader.
Yeah.
I like Zeal, because I like the stoic, wounded guy. You know, he's just like, he's so morose and he has had such bad things happen to him and he's given up. And then he learns that life is possible again and he's going to get healed, and he has antlers and a giant hammer and he's green. I just love it.
Zeal is just all the tropes that are just my catnip.
I love the trope of like, he's super damaged. His mantra's all messed up. I almost said the other thing. His mantra's all messed up. And, you know, he thinks he's totally given up and he's so disinterested, but it's in a kind of like way that you can tell is totally like a flinch reaction. Like something really, really bad happened to this guy. He's not a boring guy who just doesn't care. He doesn't care because that's his protective that's his protective shell.
Show so he doesn't just descend into
weeping, like he's just gonna he's gonna fall apart. No. And I love that he gets his arc of like he gets to come back. He's now one of the main guys. I love that he's like in the main party and like he's like Lyndon is like, nope, I'm not gonna leave you behind. I don't care. You're coming with me now. I'm pulling you guys up with me. I don't care. I love that.
Hey Zeal. We're not talking about Dreadgod yet. Don't worry about me.
I love this. It's mostly in Bloodline that Zeal has this, like, there are those moments in Bloodline where he's like, has this urge to actually help because this whole situation in Bloodline is reminding him of what happened to his own sect. Yeah. So he's got those moments of flaring up, I want to help them, or by just immediate push down of, but I don't want to be hurt again the same way I was before. And the whole moment in the end of near the end of Bloodline, where the part of like, I want to help those people finally wins out. Did not talk about it in the favorite moments bit, but it's definitely one of those like moments for me.
It's funny.
That is very relatable in some ways.
Zeal in Bloodline is when I finally got him. I for the longest time, I can't remember when he was introduced. I think it was like
Ghostwater.
There you go.
He's in Ghostwater.
I think it was like 2 books later. I saw people talking about Zeal, and I saw that Zeal had like a really dedicated, some people really liked Zeal. And I got like 2 books after he was introduced. I was like, oh, when does he get good? Because I don't like. He's pretty boring so far. And everyone's like, oh no, I loved him from the moment he turned up. I'm like, how? Like, he just, it wasn't that he didn't click with me. I was just kind of like, he's just a guy. He's just there.
The tropes didn't align. You didn't see what we saw.
No, I didn't. I feel like I didn't see that potential you guys were talking about of like, oh, we can see these tropes being used now because in the future this is going to lead to, and I think it just didn't click in my head. I think he just didn't seem to care much. And I was like, well, I don't care.
It was like making the impossible possible thing with him again, because it was he's so messed up, he's never going to be what he was. And for me, it was like of course it's Cradle. They're gonna do the impossible, and they are gonna fix him, and he is gonna get his power back.
Yeah. But then in Bloodline, he started showing off a bit. It was when he was trying to convince the clan to listen to him. That's when I was like, oh, okay, I like this Zeal, and then I really liked him in Dreadgod.
So Mercy and Zeal are both great. I do want to shout out Serial. I like Serial. Like she's great. She's just nice.
I like how casually omnipotent she is.
Yeah. I mean, so I have a character I wish I could say is one of my favorites, but he's not, because he's not the character that I want him to be. And I have a character that I actually genuinely like. The character that I would like to call favorite is Gadriel. The tank Abaddon.
Yeah.
The guy with the big shield. Because I play a tank in all of the games, and I love that archetype. Except he's an asshole, and I don't like him.
Yeah. But
I wish that were not the case. So
many judges are like,
yeah.
Speaking of judges, I really like Makiel. Or at least I liked him up until Reaper. I did not like him as of Dreadgod, but he was. It was what we were talking about with Aethan, a character who sees everything and acts on that. That is Makiel's whole thing of seeing everything, and
I hate him.
He's an asshole.
None of the likable things.
None of the likable parts. He's so controlling. It's like it's like one of those in a paternalistic way. I know better than you.
Less that I like him, and more that I find him interesting. I find this whole world he's an interesting. Yeah, the Dreadgod really pushed it over in the terms of I don't think I actually like him.
I think he's so condescending, especially to other judges too. It's sort of like the I know best, and that means you're stupid. Listen to me.
It's like the reason why I like Aethan is I think he knows everything, and I trust that he has my best interests at heart. Whereas Makiel knows everything. I'm like, I don't trust your intentions.
Yes, he is best interest in heart.
Yeah.
I like him not in the sense of I want to hang out with him and I think he's a likable character. I like him in the sense that he's interesting and I want to see what jerkastery he has in store.
Interesting characters are good.
Yeah.
But the character I genuinely like is Kelsa.
Oh yeah, she's great.
Yeah, she's cool.
She's fine. Yeah.
Lyndon's sister. And I think Jai Long did not deserve her, and Jai Long can go piss off.
You can go get hit by a bunch of launch constructs or something.
I am a Jai Long fan.
That's your character. That's your character.
I like his sister.
Jailong was Jailong was like the first character other than Yering, so I guess the second character that I liked in this series. And he is an asshole, and like the story doesn't try to pretend he's not. I liked that his motivation was of like helping his sister and going against his whole clan over it. Even if his sister turned out to, at least to me, be about as full of personality and interesting as a lamp standing in the corner, I do not like Jai Chen.
Yeah, she's not much of a character.
She's not much of anything.
I like her purely because
I don't dislike her.
Her goal sign is called Fingerling, and I love that name. Like, I just like Fingerling, and so I like Jai Chen as by extension, but as by association. Yeah. Fingerling. I'm like, oh, Jai Chen's where's Fingerling? What's he up to? What's he doing? What's that little scamp up to?
I like Jai Chen because like she was a potential like in that alternate timeline that Serial showed Lyndon where like he died because the Dreadgod attacked. It was like she was the one that married him, and so it was like, okay, like she was like a good enough person to like marry the guy everybody thought was garbage. Like, hey,
she's also,
and like she's just sweet,
nice.
Like she's nice.
I find her the blandest. Like it's not like that I dislike her. I mean, it's not like I don't like her in the sense of like I hate her or anything. I just don't have any feelings about Jai Chen. You know, I really like Jailong, but I think like after Skysworn, it feels like the story didn't know what to do with him after the duel. So he just vanishes from the plot.
Plan to do with anything. It didn't feel like there was a plan that it didn't feel like he was like a failed potential. It felt like he had his part and then he was put down on purpose. Like that's kind of what it felt like to me.
Yeah, but I think if the story like ended with him just leaving after Skysworn, I would feel more okay with it, because when he does get brought back up into the plot, it feels like the story doesn't really know what to do with him except to clown on him as a way to show how far Lyndon has progressed. Like, I did not enjoy the fact that he's being used as this measuring stick to show how far Lyndon has come, because I liked him more than I liked Lyndon, so, you know, personal preference.
Well, everyone gets used as everyone Lyndon surpasses gets a comparison moment. I don't know.
Like his parents.
Story.
Like his parents. That was a great measuring stick moment.
Yeah. Let me tell you, you can tell so much about his parents from like the different ways they react to his now incomprehensible power and knowledge. Screw his dad.
Yeah.
Screw his dad.
Yeah.
No. Once more to the pantheon of terrible fantasy dads.
Do we want to talk about Dreadgod now? Because I feel like we were starting to get into Dreadgod.
We're picking at it, aren't we? We're beginning to pick at it.
So on that note, let us move on properly into talking about Dreadgod, latest book, which we definitely have opinions about at this point.
Yes.
So,
some of us do. I liked it. I think it. I feel exactly the same way about it as all the other Cradle books. Was great. That was awesome. Next one, please.
Yep.
I liked this book less than some others, mostly because this is a setup for the last book. It was doing a lot of heavy lifting. Like there was it was a good book. I genuinely enjoyed it. It's setting up for Waybound, and
it's
so
the winter steel to Reaper, isn't it?
For me, I have mixed feelings about Dreadgod, because for me, Dreadgod is like 80% a book I really enjoyed, then 20% a heavily abridged version of a book that might have been good if it was actually written. Mm-hmm. It's like Dreadgod has those two like distinct plot arcs to me, where one plot arc is fighting against the
Silent King.
Silent King, and the finale to that one, the fight between Lyndon and company and Silent King is awesome, and I feel like it could be an excellent way to end the book. Because the book has to also set up Waybound, then we get this super abbreviated heist story. or they prep for fighting the Dreadgods. And I really wish that either this book was longer, was like just downright split in two, because I feel like this last 20%, 15%, something like that, super rushed to me. Because of that, the actual final part of the book, the fight with Akura Malice, it feels to me just rushed and doesn't have the same impact that the fight against the Silent King had.
I don't know that I agree that that's a bad thing, because it feels like the correct pacing for the scope that they are now at. If they are at the point where he has the power of a Dreadgod and they're working on the next plan and fighting the Dreadgods and Monarchs, to stop and like expand like a little like heist section feels like it would be a mistake. I feel like that would be like, why are these super powerful people struggling with breaking into a vault kind of situation? You know, so for me, it's sort of, I do agree that there was some element of being rushed at the end, but that wasn't like it. I wouldn't want a fight with Malice to have the same impact as the Silent King, because they are supposed to be on different levels. And like that's sort of how I am. I thought the ending was abrupt, but it wasn't really. I'm always like imagining like archive reading. Like when I reread this in the future, I'm gonna like this just fine, because I'm gonna go straight into the next one after they leave their hyperbolic time chamber.
Yes,
Dragon Ball Z.
This is 100% what that is.
Dragon Ball Z. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, that felt abrupt. I wish we had. I wish I had a little bit more of a denouement.
I do agree with the rushed thing, but it's a complaint I've had for like, I think since they hit Lord level. I think for some reason in my head I was expecting, because the advancements were supposed to get harder the higher up you go, but we have still been hitting one advancement a book, and it was pretty much since they hit the Lord level that I was kind of like, oh man, he's hit Overlord already? Okay. Oh, he's hit Sage already? Okay. He's hit Archlord? Okay. Oh, he's it just felt, and so because this is a complaint I've had for a while, but then also, that's also, that speed is what I like about the book. So I almost feel like I can't complain about it too much, because I'm like, if they slowed it down and there was more books and there was longer time between these cool hype moments, I'd probably like the series less, because then it's not that super fast paced thing. And so I'm like, I do agree this one, like, it's a little rushed, but then I feel like they've been a little rushed for a while, so I'm like, I like them because they're a little rushed. So it's hard.
Get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. The endings don't always work for me. Like, I don't hate any of the endings, but they don't always land as well as a Sanderson ending might for me.
Sure. Yeah.
The one that does really, really land for me is the Winter Steel one.
Okay.
Well, yes, Reaper.
I was like, okay, yes. Winter Steel.
Yes.
What was the end of? You got to remind me.
Winter Steel is the moment with the badge, where they have to talk about where the sage term comes from, and it's the unsold symbol on the badge.
Yeah.
Like that callback all the way to book one. Exquisite.
Yeah.
Right as they're heading back to the Sacred Valley, it was kind of like it was finishing the ring.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful full circle. But I don't have much to talk about Dreadgod. It was fine. I didn't enjoy it as much as Reaper or Underlord or Uncrowned Tournament. Or I keep calling it Uncrowned Tournament. It's just Uncrowned. But it was fine. Like, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
There was a moment that I wanted to bring up earlier when we were talking about Ethan, but I couldn't because it's in this book.
I wonder if it's going to be the same moment as I want to bring up.
It's the whole unmasking thing.
Yes.
And it's from the chapter 1 or the prologue or whatever it is, when he's on trial and he's jovial and it's funny and he's Ethan, and there's a moment when the mask drops and he goes,
rage.
I should have butchered all of you. I was like, give me more of that.
See, that's interesting, because like that read as fake to me. I'm like,
no, it felt as
like, it didn't feel as like a mask drop. It's like he is playing into expectations there.
There was a little bit of that, But
it's
it
like-
did read as real because it's sort of like when you go back and see friends you haven't seen for a long time, and all of a sudden you find yourself acting and like, oh my god,
You
like
wanna butcher all of them.
no. You know when like you were seeing people you haven't seen in a really long time and you've changed since then, but you go back and all of a sudden you're like, oh my god, I'm so embarrassed. Like, why am I acting like I used to? Because it's like it's almost uncontrollable. It felt real, but like because it was like it's the way he used to be with them. It was like this is how we used to feel. He used to feel this rage with them all the time, and it was having played the part of Ethan so much was how he was able to get his self-control back because he's Osriel, that full of rage, and he's so angry at them all. But he's also now Ethan, and now he knows. It's kind of like being Ethan almost gave him the power to manage his own anger.
Yeah.
I was
manage
so,
himself
I
better.
was so
All
worried
friends
that-
and family get under your skin much more easily, right?
Yeah, it's the line that felt more genuine was like my hands are bloody because like he's the one that kills worlds more so than any others. Like that was like
they made him do
like
it.
the jet.
Like
Yeah,
it was for them. It was their system that he was doing it for. So it's sort of like I absolutely buy the rage because it was them who made him become this thing that he hates or hated.
Yeah.
Hates.
For me, it's like that felt more like dropping of the mask, and it's like the like I should have slaughtered all of you was just like too much the other direction. And it's like because like he isn't Osriel anymore. Like
Well, he is. He is. Like
he
that's
is,
for
but like
me.
he has grown past. It's like
No,
I don't
that
think that's
felt-
genuinely how he is.
That's
so I was like,
that
I think
is
he was-
how I feel. I loved that moment for the same reason as Evgeni. It was like that felt real. That felt like maybe not a mask drop, but it did feel like to the core of like he has not had to be this angry because he's been away from the judges. He's been able to put it away until he's faced with them again, and he can't. I thought it was like it felt like a loss of control of like, and we've never seen him lose control.
Yeah.
And I
Mm-hmm. It's like
I think there's something to it. So I don't necessarily think that there is a genuine desire for him to like kill all of them or genuine regret that he hasn't killed all of them. But it's, you know, I don't know if anyone else felt that way, but when I read Bloodline and we got back to Sacred Valley, there was just this frustration at how reluctant everyone was to work with Lyndon and listen to him. And there was a part of me that just wanted him to go a little bit to town and just
kill someone.
them, or punch someone into the infirmary or whatever. Just let that anger out and like get things done. And I think there's a big part of Osriel that is like, you guys are getting in my way. I want to do things.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have one more thought on this is that like Osriel Ethan like sees more than anyone else. Like I don't think he just lost control, like got angry. It's like he broke and said that, and like that might be like true to some of his feelings, like for a reason. Like he has some sort of plan. Like he didn't just break because like he's frustrated. It's like no, like that's the sort of thing he has to do to like get him shackled or something. I don't know, but like it's like there was a
buy the
purpose
mastermind. I totally believe that there was a part of him that was like making a plan and trying to present a certain way. I don't believe that everything he did in that scene was like a big mastermind, like I'm going to get myself put in a situation. It didn't read that way to me at all. He had to deal with whatever they were going to do, and he was probably always going to be chained as soon as he left that room. Lots of it actually did feel real, of like he's having to talk to these people he hasn't talked to in a really long time, and he's different now. And Suriel is kind of the only one who really sees that he is different.
How different he is now was something I was really worried about. I was worried we'd lost Ethan when he revealed himself as Osriel, and I really like that he has like the Osriel character we get glimpses of in Suriel's how she talks to him about the flashbacks we get in Reaper. I was worried he turned into that character, and I'm really glad that when he's back with the Abaddon, he took Ethan with him. He carried that Ethanness with him, and I'm like, good. I'm glad he.
And I would say
feels
he's
like a combination.
mostly Ethan, right?
Yeah, he feels more Ethan than the Osriel we saw in the past now. But that Osriel is it's still there, as you guys have been saying. It's. But is it fake or
I think I'm more with Ian on this one. That I think that particular moment in that scene was like I think he does feel that frustration, and like if I could just wring their necks, it would be very cathartic. But I think that there was that somewhat deliberately, just as like letting them know how he actually feels.
Interesting.
Yeah, because like he is Osriel, but like he's Osriel that has lived through Ethan's life. So it's like because like
it just doesn't strike me
Ethan
as that
was
big.
always Osriel. Like
it's like I can see him doing it on purpose, but like not in a way that like it was an act. In no way was that an act.
It was still genuine.
In a way, even if it was part of a plan, it was I'm going to be genuine for part of the plan.
Yeah, it's like it definitely drew on something, but like it wasn't.
And that
him
part,
losing control.
And I can't follow you there. We've talked a lot about this scene. I think we've said all we're going to say. We're going to agree to disagree on our points. And one of the things, really quickly, I don't remember this Emrys woman, but I really, really liked her in this book.
She's just bad in this book. She's
I was just like, she
the star of this book.
ruled. She ruled. I'm like, oh my god, I forgot so much about her. I'm like, oh my god, she's dead. I don't remember that.
Yeah.
She's the only one who like believes in this plan and helps them facilitate what they're gonna do to make it all come out in public. And she was great.
She was like mentioned earlier a few times, like
Uncrowned.
she was shadowed basically because she's there in the background and her people are on the Uncrowned tournament and all that.
Oh yeah.
She is technically a new character and she was great. Like a lot of the new characters that are introduced in this book are really great.
Like the 8-Man Empire finally getting
the 8-Man Empire people. The archer lady who was like, oh no, we are being robbed.
I just happen to not see us being robbed as I sit on my cloud in the sky.
Well, like she shot and missed.
Yeah.
I did love that.
I do have a point on Emrys, which is like, I want to shout out Travis Baldry, the narrator of the Cradle books. It's like the "Here, kitty, kitty" line is just so good.
I hate that line.
Maybe it's a delivery thing. Maybe Travis just saves it.
He does so much.
VAs in audiobooks can definitely make or break certain moments.
It's stuff like Dreadgod is like what reminded me that Reagan Shen is a cat, because I keep thinking of him as a dragon. I don't know why, but in my head he's always he's a dragon guy. But I'm like, no. He just was working with the dragon guys and Uncrowned.
I love there's been so many references to his endless supply of goblets that I'm like, he must have an endless, like a little void space with an endless
a void key with just goblets.
Endless goblets. He must do. Like,
it's a sacred treasure that's a goblet that he can summon and dismiss.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah.
One thing I really liked in Dreadgod
Shard goblet.
I thought the transition after Lyndon killed the Silent King, the transition into Lyndon basically becoming a Dreadgod, I thought was like really well. Like people started saying like, "There's something wrong with you." Like everyone's like, and he was like being described slightly differently, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, he's fucking terrifying now." He went from scary to, "Oh no, this guy's scary." Like really, really.
It was
scary.
The fact that. This actually leads into something I was going to bring up. I love that so much. And everyone who he talks to, even like his friends in Inner Circle, they look at him and it's like, I don't recognize Lyndon in him anymore, except for Yaren. And this is part of me, like the way I ship. I don't necessarily need big romantic moments, but this was something I really noticed because Yaren immediately sees him and like it's like she doesn't even notice this is Lyndon, and she treats him just like she always has. And so for me that was like that was my moment of
they're in a relationship.
Lyndon and Yaren.
Look at them.
They're in a relationship.
The end of Oathbringer, didn't you?
Go away. Yeah, that was my big. It's not that I love Lyndon and Yaren, the ship, so much or how he's written it, but that was one of those moments that I was like, this is very subtle character work that I really, really liked. And it feels so intentional that because it's in a series. It's in a series of Lyndon after killing the Silent King and absorbing him, going to visit a bunch of his other people. So it's like a scene. Oh my God, Lyndon's different. A scene. Oh my God, Lyndon's different. Oh my God, Lyndon's different. And then Yaren, it's like, then they just start talking shop. They're like, they're ready to go on business. And like, it's like, she doesn't even notice. It's like, it's perfect. She's just like, oh, cool. You got that cool power from the Dreadgod now. Hey, Lyndon, it was a great character moment.
It was like hilarious when he went to visit ZL and
they were like, a Dreadgod's approaching. They're like, get ready to fight.
Well, so one, they're getting ready to fight. Two, the Dragon Herald, who's been talking so much smack up until that point, he's like, put me back into stasis! Put me back into stasis!
I have to say, like, there is like a word of Will that mentions that he doesn't really enjoy writing those smaller scenes and thinks they are extraneous to the story. When he does want to write them, they come across well.
I think they do.
Yeah, I wish he did it more because he does them well.
Same. Yeah. It's my major complaint of the series is I wish there was a little bit more fat, a little bit more character work, a little bit more just downtime.
Yeah.
I think I want it more. What's there? It's because he does it so well that I want more. Because it's like, okay, I know you're capable of some of this character work, of this character relationship development. I know you can do it. You're doing pretty good, man.
The one that annoyed me the most was just very quickly going backwards. At the beginning of Reaper, they're like, let's take some downtime. Let's chill for like 2 months before we like go into the labyrinth. And I was like, yes, I'm gonna get some scenes. And then the next chapter's like, wow, that was a busy 2 months. Let's go into the labyrinth. And I'm like, no.
Yep. Like the shift was so abrupt. I had to remind myself that there was a time skip.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh man.
Speaking of character moments, if I may have a small complaint about Dreadgod, I feel like Mercy was super underused in this book.
Mercy felt weird in this book.
Basically, the whole book.
Yeah.
She spends the whole book being basically knocked out of the loop on anything that is happening, being confused. It's like, then the whole, like, what doesn't make the ending of the book work for me is that a lot of the part is like motivated, but like, we have to get Mercy back, and you're like,
then you don't.
She's not doing anything. You don't really need her. You've been doing fine without her.
Yeah, you're doing fine without her.
The point is not needing her. The point is wanting her.
Yeah.
It's sort of like
she's their friend.
Yeah.
Lyndon doesn't need any of these people except for like maybe Yaren. Like, that's the point. The point is he wants them, and it's kind of like, to me, like the echo of Ethan. He doesn't need any of these people, but he wants them.
Yeah.
I get that, but at the same time, that just
or specifically Mercy, I felt she's not in a position to go into the final book. I'm not sure where we left her, what her whole plot was. I totally agree. Her plot was super weird this book because I don't think because it's like, it doesn't feel like we're going into the final book, and partly because of Mercy, it's like, how is her thing going to resolve? How are they? Maybe this book is going to be like 600,000 words. I don't know, but
Mercy felt like her parts of the story were just her running in place, where she like almost gets to a point, but then she's pulled right back by her mother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it was just. I think part of why I was like, why do you need her? Was less that I don't like her as a character, the more than I just was frustrated with how little she was doing in this book.
The story has done her a bit dirty. I think Mercy's character development in general has like stopped after Uncrowned. I think Uncrowned is the last book that I can point to that I can say, okay, Mercy had things to do of her own volition, and the rest was either she's kind of there or things happen to her.
Yeah,
it has like this one moment at the end of Dreadgod where it seems like the relationship between her and her mother is going to change, because Alice sees the end of the world and realizes, oh no, I was a terrible grandmother or mother.
Yeah.
What is the relationship? Mother.
And Mercy also manifested the armor a lot more than she normally has.
And then it's like in Dreadgod, she just runs in place.
So we'll have to see. Maybe there's like a big moment that he's waiting for in Waybound. Like, I don't know.
Presumably when we go into Waybound, like all of the characters are going to be like on the same level because they're now doing this training montage off screen.
Except for Mercy. Well, with Mercy?
Well, like, we don't know if it's going to be off screen.
She is, they took her with them when they
successfully did. Okay, see, my memory. I was like, it was so unsatisfied. I thought she was still with her mom.
And on that note, how about we move into Waybound predictions?
Oh, hi.
Hi, Ian.
Hi.
Ian.
I did think of like a question like I do want all of us to answer is like, the book does end with Suriel and Osriel in a very tenuous position.
Yeah.
Do you think either one of them is going to die?
No, because we got this whole scene with the Mad King being like, if I kill Suriel, I'll be like this. And if I kill Osriel, I'll be like this. And then he does this whole like, but what if I kill Machiel? But then so we get like this kind of like three situations. But then it ends with him going, okay, well, I'm going to kill an Abaddon. And it's kind of like so obvious he's leading us to think he's going to kill Suriel.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, I think he's going for Machiel. And I think he's going down.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And if I'm wrong, I'm going to be so pissed because I'm like, why give us this whole like setup and lead into thinking you're going to go for Machiel instead? Like, come on. Why give us this bone if you're not going to do anything with it?
Yeah, it's like, I definitely think Suriel and Athen are going to survive because it was like in like 4 out of 10, like he kills one and then like 6 out of 10 he kills the other, but like they weren't like, I don't remember what the actual numbers were, but there was like some option where he fails to kill either one. And it's going to be that one.
We all know the 1 in a million chance is the one that happens.
Yep. Yeah. Well, you never stack chances against protagonists at 1 in a million because that's
never tell me the odds. But otherwise, I don't think, other than the whole Abaddon, like who's the Mad King going to kill, I don't think there's anything I actually really care about or to theorize. I think it's pretty straightforward.
So we don't have a who's that Cradle character prepared. We thought maybe we would, but then no one did. So we're just going to end on, hey guys, what path would you guys like to be on?
The acronym would have worked. Cradle, cosmere.
Yeah, WTCC. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, we could not ask the general public.
So I can start if you guys want some time to think.
Go for it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So because I was on the Will Wight server early enough and knew people and used my nepotism to my benefit, got a custom role which has a path, and it is the Path of the Silver Sun or Silver Suns. I don't remember which one I picked, and because I don't do LCs or fanfic or anything of that nature, I have no idea what that path looks like, except that historically I've always like done silver and suns and stars and things like that as like themes and monikers that I use online. But I've been thinking about it throughout the episode, and I'm not committing to this in case I ever want to actually commit to this. But right now I'm thinking that it's some kind of, there's definitely light in the path, and I think there's also force in the path. And I think it's mostly a defensive path, something that builds shields and armors and defenses and barricades and things like that. And then for the way it plays out is it's mostly defensive, so you're mostly weathering the enemy's assault, and then your offense is in the middle of you being hunkered down with your shields and armors. You explode in like a lightning quick like attack that it looks like a light spear that like just punches the enemy because light and force and things like that. And then you kind of go back to, sitting behind your shield.
Nice.
That's pretty cool.
That's cool.
I can go next because I'm like, oh, you took some of my stuff, but it's, part of what got me immediately was that when I started Cradle, I was like, oh, a lot of like the stuff, like the same imagery and themes and stuff were already used in like by the judges and stuff. Because that just shows me that me and Will Wight maybe have some of the same aesthetic. This is cool and this is awesome. I don't have a name for this, but like I might steal like from Destiny or Destiny 2 because I like the way they name things. Like I've always loved the term sun singer, and that's like one of my favorite ones. And I know it's going to involve fire. And it's also, but in the same way, like the sun is fire, like it's like a lot of, light and more of like the combination illusion and like the ability to transfigure what you see, because that's what light is. And also just if you need it, lots and lots and lots of fire. And I was also imagining, like I was kind of like mixing up because I've always like had like the Phoenix character in mind, and then Serial comes up and I'm like, you took that from me, Will. that's mine. You can't do that. That's mine. Except the Phoenix in this one is more of a healer, whereas like this is so vulnerable. Like this is like showing like your 14-year-old like, oh, this is so embarrassing. But let's be earnest and not embarrassed. But the combination of like, I love the idea of like the theme is like light and heat and fire and even life, but also like the imagery of death. So I love like the black jackal mask and a black scythe. So I was like, this has been one of my OCs for like, they never told anyone because it's very childish, but like
sounds very cool though.
Oh my god, Shannon, so cringe.
Oh my god.
So cool.
And that's kind of what I envision is like it's the combination of like the Black Death imagery, but with fire and light and illusion. So
nice.
Yeah,
I started writing a Cradle fan fiction years ago. I got like 4 pages in, but I did a lot of the setup work of what it was going to be. It's called Path of the Storm Chaser is the one that I'm picking, and this was before lightning paths.
Ian's looking really put off.
Before I did might I have stolen it.
You'll find out. We'll find out.
And this was before lightning paths started becoming more prevalent in the story, so I thought it was a super original idea. But it's like basically you go around chasing storms, getting lightning aura, and then the path was very focused on, it was kind of a duality. I had like a whole AC/DC thing going on, but basically it focused on like really quick bursts of power. So the enforcement techniques are like you could just move super quickly, but for like just once, and then you've kind of got to retreat because you're then stuck at normal speed until you get out of there. It's obviously shoot lightning, rule the techniques where you hit everyone around you with lightning. Just the whole lightning fast stuff, but like super quick bursts of power, and then you got to get out of there if it's not enough.
Love that.
Yeah.
My idea, like I originally was going to go with one of the Destiny themes, similar to what Shannon was going with, but the idea I have is it's going to be stupid because I came up with the name in like the time it was.
There's no stupid, just earnest, earnest love for.
The idea I came up with was the Path of Stone Glacier.
Ooh,
which doesn't actually involve water. It's stone and blood path, and the idea is that you are very slow, but you are also unstoppable force. It's covering yourself in stone armor and healing quickly and having one of those iron bodies that are extremely tough. So there are no like shooting magic techniques, just purely body enforcement and anchoring yourself to the ground, covering yourself in as much armor as possible, and raising your own strength. So you would forward, you swing giant weapons that are too massive for normal humans to hold, like oversized hammers and clubs.
Yes.
And because you are slow, you're not likely to hit all of them. Even if you whiff, you are tough enough that you can withstand any position. When you do hit, you're just going to smash your enemy.
Yeah.
Love it.
I'm immediately, I'm immediately imagining Path of the Storm Chaser versus Path of the Stone Glacier, and I'm like, man, yeah, I wouldn't be able to like get through defense, but like I'm also getting out of there, so I'm like, man, this would be a
I would not catch you.
You would avoid each other on the battlefield.
Storm.
Yeah,
it's a lightning storm over a lightning rod. It's just it keeps hitting.
Yeah,
and nothing happens.
happens. Yeah.
Then the lightning storm moves on, and the lightning rod is not.
Yeah, he's like,
to give chase.
Yeah.
Scene.
So I also have a storm path. I don't have a name for this because names are hard, but it's a storm and sword path with a tiny bit of dream in there. It's a lot about like forging like a blade of lightning and like storm cloud armor, but also kind of like making autonomous constructs that look the same as you that can also fight. So kind of like I am like a force of many.
Okay. Good.
I like that.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, because I like the aesthetics of storms and lightning. And also I would go sage first, and I would go for the winter icon.
Oh yeah,
I haven't thought about icons.
We could have talked about icons, like what we want.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
There's so many we don't know, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing.
You kind of get to make them up because he's like, if there's no icon that's been manifested before, and someone does something where they want to manifest an icon, they just manifest it just makes a new one. Like,
Yes, if we can make like a fortress icon, then that would probably be the end goal.
I bet you.
Like,
yeah.
I bet you there's a fortress icon.
So it's like that's kind of the Titan icon. It's all about like defense.
Yeah.
Love it.
So I did just realize that for all that I was talking about not making it like Destiny and moving on from making it like Destiny, the whole
Titan,
not moving
Sentinel.
is very much Destiny. The whole like Titan class archetype is this immovable force.
Yeah,
Icons are a bit like shards, aren't they?
a little bit. It's sort of like there's a central idea that you can kind of reach and draw on.
Yeah. Okay, cool. We talked about paths and we talked about ways, and paths are a way to the way. There's probably a metaphor there that we've overlooked collectively, but we are too dumb to underlook it now. So we are gonna wrap this episode up. Episode 1 of Shootcast, Off-Topic Cast, Splintercast. That's what we decided to call it.
Yes.
Are we gonna have more episodes? We don't know. Are you still with us 17 hours into the recording? We also don't know.
Are there other media properties you want us to cover?
Yes.
We
It's very
don't care.
casual. We're not going to promise anything.
Yeah.
This is kind of, but we'd be curious if there was anything you were curious about. But if sometimes it just won't line up, we'll just try and see what happens.
Yeah, no, this is our show where we're like, hey, we wish we could talk about this thing and also put it on in the internet for other people to listen to us talk.
Yeah.
We've talked about doing like Marvel things and like I think Dresden podcast is likely, like when the new book comes out, because a lot of us are fans, things like that.
Yeah, I'd love to do one about like MMOs, but I don't know if there is an MMO out there where enough of us play it among the shortcasters to.
Rasarr, me and you will do a 40k one when the last book of Siege of Terror comes out.
But this is very like informal and structured, right? You're not losing any shardcasts or anything like that. This is in addition to everything else. And with that, I will take us out of this episode by plugging several places where we are online. That includes our website, 70shard.com. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr. I was going to say IceCloud, SoundCloud. We are on Patreon, where we do art and sometimes outtakes and sometimes early takes of things. We are on Instagram, where we sometimes share art, but mostly share our own art commissions. We are on Discord, where most of the conversation in our community happens these days. In fact, I believe we still have a Cradle thread or a Dreadgod thread. Unless we've
I think it got
It's
archived.
archived now. Yeah,
Okay.
it's archived now.
Okay, but maybe if this episode comes out after Waybound, this will be true once again, because we'll probably pick one, because we're Cradle gang's big gang.
Big gang. Watch Diceborn, and also watch
Diceborn.
Span Reads.
Watch Span Reads.
We're not just Shardcast anymore. We have other shows. Watch them.
The big operation we are these days.
Great. Any other plugs that you want to plug into my outro?
You got him.
You got them.
Fantastic. Then let's get out of here.
Bye.
Bye.
Who's gonna
Thanks
call?
for enduring us. Car.
Car.